Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto tried to get as far from Konoha as possible and stumbled upon his own family. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. He felt heavier than Choji after 3 weeks of all-you-can-eat buffets for breakfast, lunch, dinner and snacks. But he was sure it was worth it. After all, he was almost a ninja now. He only had to wait for Mizuki-sensei and show him the jutsu he had just learned. This time he knew he could do it. Just then Iruka-sensei stumbled in the clearing. Looks like the final part of the test was about to start. Sensei, you're early, but that okay. I'm ready to rock the repeat exam. Naruto greeted him. Iruka on the other hand looked ready for anything but the exam. Naruto, what do you mean repeat exam? He had a very bad feeling about this. Huh? Well, I guess Mizuki-sensei didn't tell you. He gave me another chance to become a ninja. I had to get this scroll and learn one jutsu until he or another examiner comes to check on me. If by then I can perform one jutsu of this scroll, I become a ninja. Great, isn't it? And it gets better. I learned a jutsu already. So all I have to do is to wait for an examiner and show him what I learned. Believe it. Naruto told his sensei. Iruka knew Naruto got tricked before he even finished his explanation. No small feat, since Naruto talks faster than Kiba could run away from homework. It was almost funny. The prankster himself got tricked. But nobody would use the forbidden scroll for a mere prank. No, this was clearly treason, and Mizuki tried to frame Naruto. Just as that thought hit him, so did a shuriken. Damn, he had been so surprised that he entirely forgot about everything else. Well, too late for this now. He had to get Naruto and the scroll out of here. Naruto? Mizuki used you? There is no repeat exam. Take the scroll and run. Make sure Mizuki won't get the scroll. Iruka screamed, well, praying that Naruto would listen to him for once. It even seemed so until Mizuki opened his big mouth. Naruto, don't you want to know why everyone hates you? I will tell you. You're the Kyuubi. The fourth never killed the demon, he only made sure you could never again hurt anyone. You are the reason so many people died 12 years ago. Even Iruka's parents. Naruto was speechless, that just couldn't be. But a lot of things made suddenly much more sense. He remembered how he heard so many whispers about a demon. Almost as if those whispers were following him. He remembered how shopkeepers would throw him out the moment he set a foot in their shops. He remembered how he would make new friends one day and the very next they wouldn't talk to him. He remembered how Hokage would cheer him up, saying he should be patient because it was a very important trait for a ninja. That moment the world came to a screeching halt. He knew. Hokage knew it. He knew what he was and didn't tell him anything. After all those years wondering what he did wrong, after all those years hoping that when he got strong enough, people would like him, after all those years trying to find a single person willing to be his friend. Why didn't Hokage tell him? Was he scared that Naruto would try to eat someone? He had asked more times than he could count why people hated him. What else didn't he tell him? Naruto couldn't take it anymore. He turned around away from Mizuki and Iruka-sensei and ran. Ran as fast and as far away as he could. Tears started to blind him. Where he was running he didn't know, didn't see, didn't care. As long as wherever it was would be as far away from here, from Konoha, from this lying Hokage as he could get. He didn't even realize that he still carried the scroll. A few weeks later things have calmed down in Konoha. Mizuki was in prison and Iruka in the hospital. Everybody knew Naruto was framed and to be brought back to the village, if found. Alive and healthy. Thank you very much. But everybody also knew that since the Hunternans didn't find him already, he was most likely dead or so far away that they will surely never see him again. Almost the whole village celebrated Naruto's disappearance with a large festival. A few people were even worried not for Naruto's well-being, but that somebody might use him and turn him against Konoha. After all, he was the Jinchuriki of the most powerful Biju. Only a handful people were concerned for Naruto himself. Naruto had seen better days. Heck, the days when he was homeless after the orphanage kicked him out were better days. He was scared, lonely and cold. At least he had learned enough survival skills in the academy and therefore wasn't thirsty or hungry. He was also glad that he learned how to hide due to his many pranks. He had never seen so many Hunternans in his life. He couldn't even give that scroll back or leave it there, it would just give the Hunternans a trail. A small part of him didn't even want to give the scroll away, after all Konoha could get his due. Naruto was making his way to the border of Fire Country slowly, with great care and even greater stealth. Once there he hinged into a normal-looking young man who looked like he was a traveler and wouldn't draw attention from anyone. He wondered where he should go now. Where could he even go? The Fire Nation had good trade roads to the north and west. So, there would likely be Konoha ninjas. Maybe the natives would even sell him to Konoha. Naturally he couldn't go there. To the south was the ocean that was a no-go too. That left the east. Iruka-sensei taught him that there was a mountain as a bit of a natural barrier, and even after the mountain was the land of diamonds he thought with ninjas so strong that only jonins were sent there. Partly because diamond and fire weren't particularly friendly with each other. Well, he should be somewhat safe there. A few weeks later, Naruto was just reaching Daemon's capital Titan. He had never seen such a huge city or that many women. He must have seen over 100 persons already and only 4 of them were men. And other boys were absolutely nowhere. He actually wondered if those people here had ever heard of boys, judging by the looks he was getting probably not. He was looked at as if he were some sort of cute animal that was believed went extinct. He had actually wanted to not draw attention because of the hunternans, but that was absolutely impossible here. Still he couldn't bring himself to worry the people here were so nice. Girls wanted to play with him, women would give him sweets, shopkeepers invited him and gave him stuff for free and best of all everyone wanted to talk with him. And listen to him. He was only in Titan for 3 hours, but already made a bunch of friends, all girls his age, got a meal and a place to stay for free. He had dropped his henge in the middle of the mountains because he would need his energy after all. Besides, he was sure nobody in Titan would allow Konoha to take him since he was quite a rarity here. Life was good. He could play all day with the girls of Titan. Which was what he was doing right now. 3 girls had taken him to a forest near the palace. It was huge. Both the forest and the palace. They were playing hide and seek and Konoha nobody would have played with him. Naruto was hiding and due to practice, because of pranks, really good at it too. He was now behind a really large and thick tree where someone cut a strange symbol in the trunk. He wanted to trace the lines of the symbol with his finger, but the moment he touched it, a light suddenly appeared. When the light died down, the whole tree was gone. And there were stairs instead going deep down to a cave in the ground. Naruto was sure this was a great hiding place. So he went down the stairs and on deeper into the cave. Naruto was surprised that there were so many different ways, sometimes even with a door built into the stone walls. And that there was just no end in sight. Did this cave cover all the city? And why was nobody here? And where exactly was here anyway? Damn, he got lost. Well, he was sure to win this round of hide and seek, after all if he couldn't find himself, none of the girls would either. Still, he had to find a way to the surface, then he could at least ask someone where he was. One way in the maze seemed to go slightly higher, so Naruto followed it. It was strange, the cave seemed more and more like some sort of basement the further he got. Just that nothing was stored here and no house would need such a huge basement in the first place. But by now the cave looked like a floor of a high-class restaurant, only without windows. But there was still nobody anywhere. Naruto had 2 hours ago stopped looking behind the doors, there were just more doors and ways. So he just walked in a straight line and listened for someone or something. After forever and 3 days, he finally heard voices. You know as they will. Better than I thought you. Naruto followed the voices through a door and found himself in the biggest and most beautiful room he had ever seen. The bed alone was bigger than Sasuke Team's ego after he inherited the egos of his entire clan. There were huge paintings everywhere, in fact the door he came through just now was completely covered by a painting of some impressive waterfall. He found the 2 women he had heard earlier. Both were really old, like 200 years. One was dressed like a librarian or secretary. The other was sitting at a desk over some papers and wearing a kimono that couldn't be described because no words would ever do justice to such beauty. Not to mention, she was wearing more jewelry than he could lift. Naruto was rather nervous, he just got into some rich guy's bedroom and he didn't even wear slippers. Hopefully these guys had humor. Excuse me, I sort of got lost, can you tell me where the exit is? Naruto asked carefully. He was ready to make a run for it. But damn, it wasn't his fault for being here. There were no signs that he shouldn't go into the cave, and once there, he had no way to know where he was going. That was a freaking maze. The 2 women were speechless. Who was he? And what was he doing here? And what on earth was an unsupervised child doing in the palace? Even worse, in the royal bedroom? Unknown to Naruto, he had just met the Queen of Diamond and surprised her more than a declaration of war. Her secretary however recovered first somewhat. Who the hell are you? I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Listen, I really didn't want to come here wherever here is. I was just playing in the forest when a tree disappeared and turned into a cave and I really just wanted to have a short look at it. Really. But then, the cave turned into a maze and I got lost and I was trying to find an exit like forever. And then I heard you and came here. I really didn't want to cause trouble. Naruto quickly tried to explain himself. By the time Naruto finished, Queen Sari found her voice again. Calm down. It's no problem, but I am curious how you ended up here. Do you think you could find the entrance to the maze again? So I could make sure nobody else gets lost there. Sure thing. It was in the forest, in front of the palace. Naruto answered. So Naruto was escorted to said forest by the queen herself and her still student assistant. Meanwhile the queen's thugs were racing. Sure, she knew of the basement. But on every single entrance was a seal that opened only for members of the royal family. Did a seal got faulty or even removed? But that also couldn't be, the entrance would just be locked completely. And what was a little boy doing in Titan in the first place? There just weren't any boys born here because of the bloodline. He also looked a whole lot like her dog Thurkari. But that was even less possible, she disappeared so long ago and would have girls anyway. Still. She couldn't help but hope to finally have someone related to her, however distant, still young enough to keep the royal family line alive. And then she saw it. The seal that opened a way to the basement for her family alone. It was carved into the wood and still perfect. The tree would disappear for her and no one else, not even her husband. At least so she thought, until this boy touched it and the tree vanished in that familiar glow. The queen wasn't sure what her sentiments to all this was exactly, but her assistant seemed to share it. She fainted. A short time later Naruto was again in the palace. This time he came through the front gates and was trying to recover from his earlier shock. He had family. He still couldn't believe it. After all those years of not knowing. And what for a family. The fourth Hokage was his own father. And the queen herself was his great-grandmother from his mother's side. He had a chance to actually live with his family. Queen Sari used his blood with a seal that wrote his family tree. The result was on a large scroll that Naruto naturally clung to with all his might. They made extra another scroll with that seal so he could keep his version. Queen Sari needed his family tree for the council because they would need a proof that he was indeed related to her. He was going to live with his family. Already he noticed the first changes. A servant was sent to get Naruto's things and 2 women were guarding him and talking with him to make sure he wasn't bored. Best of all, they knew his grandmother, the daughter of the queen. So he was just listening to stories about her. Meanwhile the council had as much trouble believing Naruto's heritage as he himself. "Are you absolutely sure?" asked Korra. Korra was usually rather quiet and often said nothing during a whole meeting. Funny, she was the first to find her voice again after this shock. "I checked twice and I know both seals were perfect. Not to mention he was able to open a door to the basement," Queen Sari answered. "But a boy. It should be impossible because of our bloodline alone. And how could he know when we had no clue that heir was still alive?" Korra still wasn't convinced. "Oh, he didn't know. He found an entrance to the basement and got lost. He came out in my bedroom and asked where the exit was." The queen chuckled. "Well, that does sound like Kari." Korra was finally convinced. By this time the other members had recovered from their shock. "Does the prince still have our bloodline?" asked Namiko. "I think so. Otherwise the seal to the basement would have knocked him out even with him being related to me," the queen answered. She already knew Naruto's existence would cause a ruckus. Not only in Diamonds, but in the whole world. And she didn't even take Naruto's character into account. God only knew what will happen if he inherited any of Kari's troublemaking nature. Other nations wanted the nature bloodline forever and families with that bloodline wanted to get ties to the royal family. Since Naruto could get as many wives as he wanted, half the world will probably come to Titan. That was just way too many people. She had to set basic rules before anyone got wind of Diamond's prince. Which was actually the main reason she started this meeting. Sure, the council will give their own family advantages, but she preferred a future queen that was native to Diamonds, anyway. Still, she wished this could have waited at least until Naruto had a chance to sort his thoughts out. Well, she could use this meeting to buy him some time. 2 months should be enough. And the next school year starts in a bit more than 3 months, anyway. Yeah, a wife of him should be well educated, especially about this country. The girls should come a few days beforehand, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And the numbers had to be controlled. Every group can send 3 girls max with a small group of escorts. Better make sure the escorts are limited too, before someone gets the bright idea to send 50 girls as escorts. For 3 girls 10 escorts should be enough. That way 3 adults can look after 1 girl and 1 could help them with other things. Naruto can add or dismiss any girl at any time. And there should be a party to introduce the girls, so Naruto sees the girls and for the girls to meet Naruto. Best throw this party around 5 days before school starts. Until then Naruto could get used to his family and to being a prince. The boy, whose future was so thoroughly discussed, had in the meantime fallen asleep. His company guards had already told him everything they remembered or heard about his grandmother and even a few anecdotes about his great-grandmother that she would have never told anyone. So, with no more stories to hear and nothing to do, Naruto barely remembered to send someone to those girls that had played hide and seek with him. Just to make sure they weren't worried. Strange how this very morning seemed like a lifetime ago. The queen hardly remembered the last time she was here. When was it? 30 years ago. Or 40. It didn't matter. The education of young elites was well taken care of by her ministers, so it wasn't like she let this place root or something. Still, as she went in front of the young and obviously nervous ninjas, she couldn't help but feel guilty for ignoring this place for so long. It couldn't be helped, she needed bodyguards for Naruto before his existence and lineage became common knowledge. When she had greeted Sayuri, the poor woman nearly had a heart attack. But quickly recovered and presented happily and touched proudly her charges. Sayuri was director of the crystals, the elites of Titan, similar to Anbu in Konoha. The crystals stood at attention and waited for her orders or an explanation why on earth the queen personally came to headquarters instead of giving her missions to Sayuri like usual. Queen Sari looked over the rows of ninja and spoke to Sayuri, but loud enough for all crystals to hear. Something important came up. I need a few of your best, maybe 10 or so. High-profile bodyguard mission for quite a few years. No ties to any faction that could hope to take the throne after my death. Preferable on the young side, maybe around 16 or younger. Sayuri was speechless. 10 crystals. For years. Loyal to the royal family only. What on earth was going on? And since when did anyone, much less the queen herself, talk about the disaster that was bound to happen after her death? Well, first things first. Sayuri made a mental list of crystals that would meet the criteria and called out, step forward. Kazami Sona, Rika Kanaki, Miyuki Nanoka, Kaji Suzuki, Am Yashako, Kyoko Akame, Toriko Yamada, Mariko Yamada, Haruhi Mikani and Miyazuki. All crystals were confused about the mission parameters, but naturally didn't show it. The 10 girls got in a row in front of Sayuri and the queen and bowed, still hiding their confusion. While the others all left, the queen looked them over. Kazami was a bit on the small side and apparently 15 years old. Kaji was in contrast rather tall, maybe 17, and seemed a bit dark with her long black hair and dark brown eyes. Am had a softness about her, like a mother, that made one wonder why she was a ninja in the first place. She was completely calm and relaxed, unnaturally so for a 16-year-old in front of a leader. Next to her Kyoko was a nervous wreck and tried desperately to hide it, failing miserably. Not too surprising for someone barely 15. Rika was also 15 and absolutely focused and serious. On her other side, Miyuki beamed at the queen. She didn't care what the mission was, she would give her best anyway. After all, not many 14 years old can get a mission from the queen herself. Toriko and Mariko were twins, 15, and stared curious at the queen for instructions. Haruhi didn't look at anyone, too shy to even tear her eyes from the ground. The 16-year-old was busy calming herself down enough to actually pay attention. Maya was the only one, not even trying to hide her confusion, and looked questioningly from Sayuri to the queen and back. Maya was the oldest with 17, 2 months older than Kaji. Queen Sari was sure that these 10 young ladies would do great as bodyguards for Naruto and would likely become his friends as well. The entire procession went to a small office for the briefing and the queen activated the privacy seals. By now, none of the girls nor Sayuri bothered to hide their curiosity, so the queen explained, alright, you are too young to remember my daughter Kari, so I will start over 40 years ago. My husband and I only had one child, Kari, and when she was 18, she wanted to see the world before settling down and take over the throne. She ran away and left a letter that she wanted a few adventures but would be back before she turned 30. We understood that she wanted to see the world in her young years, so we let her go and didn't try to bring her back. Instead we waited. And waited. And waited. And waited some more. But at some point Kari's 30th birthday came and left, and Kari still wasn't back. Naturally we were worried, even though we knew she was more than strong enough to take care of herself. A lot of our best went to investigate, but lost her trail on the southern shore of fire. We had no choice but believe that Kari died on the ocean. The trail ended 3 years after her departure from Titan. By the time we found out where she went missing, she was already gone for over 12 years and we had to assume she was dead since that time. I don't know what exactly happened or why she didn't come back, but it is for sure that Kari survived back then and somehow ended up with the daimyo of Whirlpool. They had at least one daughter, my granddaughter Kushina Uzumaki. Somehow this Kushina ended up in Konoha, the ninja village of fire, and had a child with the 4th Hokage. A 12-year-old boy, Naruto Uzumaki, my great-grandson and heir. You are to guard and protect him at all times. Preferable become his friend as well. Silence fell over the room while everyone tried to come to terms with what was said. Sayuri especially was dizzy with the implications. She was part of the search party for Kari back then and still remembered the grief for her that showed not only on the queen's face as well as the worry over what would happen and who would lead Diamond after Queen Sari's passing. That worry grew with each year and was always at the back of the mind of all who realized what the lack of an heir meant. The girls' maid didn't understand the political significance of Naruto's existence, but they sure as hell recognized the honor they would get by guarding the heir of Diamond. Of course, they couldn't agree fast enough. So all of them went to the palace without even packing. Sayuri tagged along just to see the young prince. After a little walk they were inside the palace and in front of a little boy of 12 years who was fast asleep. The 2 guards of the queen, who had been watching over him, stood up for a silent greeting. Nobody wanted to wake Naruto up, so the queen just carried him to one of the guest rooms, his new guards following quietly. Sayuri, on the other hand, had seen enough. With a small smile and a heart lighter than a feather, she left the palace and went home. The next morning Naruto woke up quite dizzy and took a look around. Nope, he didn't know where he was, but he was already used to it. Since running from Konoha, he hadn't spent the night in one place twice. So that neither worried Naruto, nor did it got the sleep out of his brain. But the girls apparently out cold on the floor, sure as hell did. Other girls weren't even sleeping but standing around and doing absolutely nothing. Who were they? What were they doing here? Other than standing around or sleeping, and where exactly was here? Somehow that question was rather familiar. Suddenly Naruto remembered the previous day and a few things started to make sense. The big room and soft bed. He was still in the palace and his great-grandmother put him here when he fell asleep. But that didn't explain why his room was filled with girls or why some of them were sleeping on the floor. By now one of the girls noticed that Naruto was awake and promptly chirped. "Good morning, your majesty." That caused all others to turn around and those on the floor to rise to greet him as well. After such a loud greeting, the following silence sounded deafening. Good morning as well whoever you are," Naruto replied. "Oh. Of course. The introductions. I'm sorry, I forgot it. I'm Yuki and these are Kazami, Rika, Kaji, Am, Kyoko, Toriko, Mariko, Haruhi and Maya." The youngest girl beamed, pointing at each girl as she said the name. "Nice to meet you." Naruto grinned, despite making sure his blanket would cover his privates. He took a peek to see how much clothes exactly he was wearing. And took another to make sure he didn't wear anything. Hopefully, the girls didn't see him when he was undressed. After sending a quick prayer to Kami that whoever took his clothes was please a guy, not very likely with a number of males around, Naruto looked around again in search of anything to wear. On the chair, he saw a few clothes. Not his own jumpsuit, but apparently a kimono. It was blue, thank goodness for males, rather pretty and unfortunately too far away from the bed to reach without giving a show to those girls. "Do you mind waiting outside so I can get dressed?" asked Naruto. "My apologies. We are to guard you, therefore we have to stay in the same room as you. But we could turn around if you like," Rika answered. "Guards? Why on earth would he need guards? Much less while putting on his clothes." Well, at least it explained why girls were sleeping in his room. Though not why they did so on the floor. "Yeah, I would prefer some privacy," Naruto told them. After the girls turned away from him, some towards the door, others towards the windows, he quickly went over to his kimono and put it on before one of the girls tried to peek. When he was done, he said, "Okay, you can look again. Now, do any of you know where we can get breakfast?" This time Am answered, "Actually, the queen wanted to see your highness once woken up. I was under the impression that she wanted to take her meal together with you and discuss something." Naruto was happy to hear that he would eat with his own family, something he always dreamed about when he was still in the orphanage. So he just grinned and nodded to the girls, who took the hint and led him through the castle to a large room. The room was almost empty, only a big desk, a number of chairs and his great-grandmother with two others were there. Naruto subtly and tactfully asked for Queen Sari's attention, "Mornin' Gran. Well, at least it worked." The queen looked up and smiled to the newcomer. "Good morning Naruto, did you sleep well?" "Yeah, I slept great. Waking up was kind of weird though." He answered, "Say Gran, why did you put guards in my room? I traveled from Konoha to Titan on my own. I can look after myself." Naruto sulked. "Well, obviously you can't defend yourself while sleeping. That aside, you're now the crown prince of Diamond and my only heir. A lot of people will want your head once your status gets known. Even an accident would be a catastrophe because if we lose our last heir, we may end up with a civil war. Before you came, we actually expected a war in 2 or 3 years and couldn't do anything to prevent it. Without an heir, different groups will try to seize power and fight each other. Now that we have a chance to avoid this, I will make sure to keep you safe. Therefore the bodyguards. Think of it as a family tradition. Your grandmother Kari and I also had bodyguards when we were your age." The queen explained patiently. Naruto didn't buy it for a second. But before he could say anything on the matter, his stomach answered instead with a loud and angry growl. The queen just smiled and asked innocently, "Would you like to get breakfast?" With no other choice, Naruto laughed sheepishly and nodded. While they all went to the dining room, the queen invited forced Naruto to a shopping trip in the afternoon because he still had only what he had carried when he ran away. But before that, he would get a tour through the castle and had to decide what room he wanted. If he was lucky, his great-grandfather would be back by the end of the tour. Naruto sure hoped so. After the queen ordered 4 carriages and 20 servants to transport his bare minimum of necessities, he feared what exactly that meant to her. For him it meant clothes to wear and a kunai. Maybe with her husband there, the queen would be calmer. Not to mention he could ask both for training or at least a training room so he could finally train other jutsus of the Forbidden Scroll. Breakfast was rather quiet, or as quiet as 14 people eating could get. Nobody talked. Not even Naruto. He was too surprised how good the food was, despite not being ramen, to talk. When everyone was finished, Queen Sari started Naruto's tour. First Naruto got to take his own bedroom. So the queen showed him a few rooms to choose from. The first room had been from his grandmother Kari when she lived in Titan, but Naruto refused to set his foot in there. The room was pink. There wasn't a big difference between the others, so Naruto just decided on the room with the best view. His choice had absolutely nothing to do with the seal he knew would lead him to the basement that he saw on one of the paintings. Not that he planned on leaving, but a secret passage could always be helpful. Besides, it was large enough to even train in. Come to think of it, he could do a few laps around the room when he came back from Grand's shopping spree. So with his choice set, the group split up. A few of Naruto's guards would get their belongings to the room and the rest would stay with him. A servant was called to put the Forbidden Scroll in this room and then wait in the entrance area for the results of their shopping trip and bring everything in there. The other rooms were more interesting to Naruto. Not only the training hall, dining room, kitchen and bathrooms, but also a pretty big library with a large jutsu part, a beautiful garden, a pool area, even with slides, and a stable with horses. Last he saw the room he was sure to hate before the end of the week. He would get taught there about Diamond's history and traditions, general politics, manners, decorum, strategy, geography and any subjects his teachers believed could use some work. Given his bad marks in the academy, Naruto was beyond sure he would hate it. So he tried to explain his gran that there was really no need and he was done with education anyway. Though the queen just laughed and explained that in Titan the students in the academy learned not only 3 years, but if they wanted to continue, they could learn 5 more years and start in a higher position. As a member of Diamond's royal family, Naruto had to attend those 5 years. Not to mention, he would need to learn more about his country anyway, so he can become a good king. Naruto wasn't entirely sure what to think of this. He wanted to become Hokage for such a long time, however that obviously wasn't an option anymore. But becoming king. If the people of Diamond were anything like those in Konoha, he wanted nothing to do with them. And he sure as hell wasn't going to tell anyone why exactly he left Konoha. Who knew what his family would think of him? Before he could sink deeper in these dark thoughts, a deep voice interrupted. "Hello Sari-chan, why did you send Tari to me? It's not like I was gone for too long, it wasn't even a full day and you said before it wouldn't be a problem. What's the matter?" Naruto blinked and looked up to see a large and old man with a similar kimono as the one he was wearing. The man was probably as old as the Hokage, but showed still more hair and a lot of muscles. He ignored everyone but the queen and seemed to pout slightly. Was this man his great-grandfather? The queen glowed with happiness. "Welcome back, dear. I wanted to introduce someone to you. This is Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and grandson of our dear Kira. Naruto, this is Jure, my husband and your great-grandfather." Jure froze up for an eternal moment, looking intently at his wife and wondered if she was pulling his leg. She never wavered. And he realized that she was beyond serious. Besides, she wouldn't joke about this anyway. So, very slowly and carefully and most likely looking like a drugged psychopath, he turned around to his newly discovered family. And found himself breathless in the face of Naruto's grin, so much like Kira's, so much like his own. Jure wanted to say 1,000 things, like that he was happy to meet Naruto, that Naruto would like it here, that the whole country would celebrate his arrival and so much more. Wanted to ask him even more, like how he got here, how he liked it here, if the people were nice to him so far, where he came from, how old he was, what his favorites were, and so on and so on. With his brain so unsure what to say, his mouth decided on its own, hi. Despite the rather short greeting, Naruto's grin became even wider. "Hi, Gigi. Do you want to come shopping with us?" Gran said, "You could help us." He replied. Jure laughed, loud and clear, and far more relaxed than he remembered ever being. Looks like Naruto inherited not only Kira's grin, but also her taste for nicknames. "Sure. I can't let my great-grandson get scared for life because of Sari's shopping habits. When are we going?" Jure joked. The woman in question looked a bit miffed, but answered anyway, "We wanted to go after finishing Naruto's tour through the castle. But we got to the most important rooms already, so if you like, we can go now and let Naruto explore the rest later." After everyone agreed, they prepared to leave. And what for preparations they had to make. Naruto was beyond annoyed with all the trouble they had for a simple shopping stroll. First, they called for some bodyguards for Gran. 7 escorts and that was only a small selection of her guards. Then a big carriage with driver had to get ready. In the meantime the queen sent for a few, 16 servants to carry the stuff they were about to buy. He realized his family would take quite some getting used to. If this was how Gran bought bare minimum of necessities, he sure as hell would always be busy whenever she went for bulk buying. 3 hours later, Naruto finally sat down in the carriage and the whole procession set out towards the city. The people were rather confused, the queen rarely left the palace and when she did it was about some political meeting. Her husband, the king, was more for a casual stroll through the city but usually went alone or with close friends. Last time both of them went for a shopping spree was 20 years ago. Even then, there were far less bodyguards and servants. As if that wasn't weird enough, quite a few bodyguards were rather young. Not that anyone doubted their abilities, but why the sudden change? Though the strangest of all was actually the young boy sitting between the royal pair. Who was he? And why was he with the royal family? So everyone stared more or less openly at the procession and especially at Naruto. The prince himself didn't think much of the attention. Heck, if such a large group would go in front of him, he would stare too. Half an hour and a lot of bows later, they arrived at the first shop clothes. To be precise, it was a store for kimonos of a very high quality. The vendor personally came to the queen and after a bow, asked her how he could help. Sari had already made a list and simply stated. We need a few things for this young man. And pointed at Naruto, well, first he needs some casual clothes. 30 sets should do for the beginning, then 10 sets for training, and another 10 for official business of varying degree of importance. The vendor would have wondered about the odd situation, but right now, he was too happy to care. After all, it wasn't every day that he could sell 50 complete outfits. And the queen had an expensive taste. So the vendor led all of them to the male section. He would have to change every single kimono because the only males that bought here were foreigners and those were usually already adults. Naruto took a look around him at all those expensive and pretty kimonos. A week ago, he wouldn't have believed to ever wear one and now, his Gran was about to buy him more than some clans had. Gigi was already in a chair and halfway to dreamland, much to Gran's annoyance. Naruto for his part just smiled and looked for some clothes he would like. Difficult decision, pretty much everything there was beautiful. In the end Naruto decided on a selection of blue, orange and black kimonos for whatever Gran called casual situations. Training clothes were easy, the vendor just brought a bunch of sets he considered most comfy and tight enough to not get in the way. The prince tried on those he liked the most and made a few stretches to see if they would constrict his movements. After 10 form-fitting kimonos were chosen, the real trouble started. Naruto became really scared what sort of official business a prince would have to deal with. The clothes alone were getting on his nerves. He was a ninja and not a damn Christmas tree. For example, one offered kimono had pink diamonds sewed in everywhere. Of course, Naruto refused to even try it. Another one had so many layers that he would take 3 hours to even get it on. But some were actually great, like a kimono that shimmered like a rainbow and one other with flames printed at the bottom. Thankfully the queen didn't butt into Naruto's choice of undergarments, so he just collected a bunch of boxers and socks and was finally done with clothes shopping after 4 hours. Unfortunately, the 50 kimonos were still not enough for Gran's bare minimum of necessities, so the next stop was a bookstore of all things. Before he could even set a foot in the place, Naruto was already beyond annoyed and sort of tired because of the dressing marathon. On the other hand, his Gigi was wide awake, no wonder, after his 4-hour nap. Luckily, Naruto didn't have to do much in the bookstore. So he took a page out of Gigi's book and slept through the whole thing. Meanwhile, his great-grandparents just took the books they thought would be good for the prince. Gran decided on books about politics, leadership, chakra, history and other things he would have to learn. Gigi chose flat out the entire series of Icha and a few other more or less graphic adult books, but also some normal adventure novels. When the queen noticed her husband's choices, she was less than pleased and their discussion woke Naruto up. Only 12. That's hardly acceptable literature for Naruto. Not even on the off chance that's actually legal. What are you thinking? Oh, come on. You know, I wouldn't do this without a reason. If he gets interested in girls early, it will make a lot of things far easier. Then we can discuss with him about his choices and give him some advice. The king answered, effectively ending their argument. Naruto himself wondered what his Gigi did, but quickly forgot it when he heard the next stop was a toy store. The vendor of this store really couldn't understand why the royal family came or why they allowed this boy to get anything he liked. So he just stood there, staring dumbfounded while a very happy blonde boy pointed to half his inventory and a dozen servants collected the items. Of course Naruto just had a ball, he hardly ever had toys and now his family bought him everything he wanted. Maybe this shopping spree wasn't so bad after all. Naruto even asked his bodyguards what their favorite games were, bought the required items and promised his girls to play with them. But the best part was the last shop, a weapons store. A sword was a must-have because swords are just cool. Kunai and shuriken were natural and got bought in large numbers. Then came the training equipment. 100 training dummies, 2 training swords, a few sports equipment like climbing ropes, trampoline and a punch bag, mats for 50 square meters, 20 automatic target that moved in different patterns, all kinds of balls and some other things. Like weights for basically every body part, no joke. Juri even got a weight for the part that defines a man and told Naruto flat out that he'll be thankful when he's older. Thought right now, the only thing he was thankful for was that Gran didn't notice. In the store Naruto finally remembered to ask Gran for training. She agreed with tears in her eyes and promised to have a teacher for him the very next day. So after everything was done, they got back to the palace. Queen Sari went straight to her paperwork and asked Jura to find teachers for the prince, not only for training, but for knowledge and other things as well. With his family busy, Naruto had the evening free to put away all the stuff and play with his new toys. The bodyguards may never left him, but that was finally okay with him. He had felt enough loneliness for 7 lives. So Naruto didn't even make much of a fuss when some of them followed him into the bathroom or into his bed. Yeah, being a prince would take a lot of getting used to, but for his family it was worth it. Naruto wasn't the only one who had to adjust to strange family members. In Konoha, the whole Hyuga clan was currently in a tizzy. Hinata hadn't been the same since Naruto left. Sure, almost all of them wanted her to change, but not into a problem child. Hinata didn't leave her room for a week, not even for food. She would have probably died of thirst if she hadn't had an own private bathroom. No amount of yelling, consoling, threatening and help of Inoichi Yamanaka got any reaction. Hiashi had tried in that order. One of the elders even tried to get her out with brute force. They ended in the hospital after Hinata had shut down all his tenketsu and threw him out of her window. She almost missed team assignments despite it being delayed for a week. What finally got her out was a fight with Hanabi. Her little sister had overheard 2 villagers talk about Naruto and the true reason why he left. Of course the little girl believed the adults were right about him and the Kyuubi being the same. So she told Hinata that nobody should cry for a demon. The Ashi just happened to be near them and heard Hanabi and paled to an unhealthy green. Of course he was scared of losing his daughters to the Third's Law. But before he could even open his mouth, he saw something far scarier than the Kyuubi. Hinata banged her door open and glared at her little sister. In 2 seconds she beat her with brute strength, more accurateness than Hiashi himself could muster, and without a single bit of chakra. After Hanabi lost consciousness, Hinata marched out of the Hyuga compound, filling everyone with terror, and into the Hokage Tower. She didn't ask for an appointment, heck, she didn't even acknowledge the secretary. Instead she just went straight into the Hokage's office, completely ignored the Jonins and Anbus already there, and yelled at the Hokage loud enough for the entire village to hear. About the injustice done to Naruto, about how he suffered the entire time, how she thought his dear Jiji was supposed to protect him. The Hokage for his part would be furious that a little child would yell at him in front of his best ninjas no less if he wasn't just glad that someone cared for Naruto. The fact that she was totally right had nothing to do with it. Little did he know that it would be the last time for a long while that anyone heard her voice. Because after this, Hinata refused to talk to anyone. Not a word at the introduction of the genin teams, not at training, not at mission, certainly not at her home, and not anywhere else either. Some joked she was hoarse now, other tried to cheer her up, but most just let her be. If someone found Naruto, she would talk again and if not, well, she wasn't that important anyway. Right. Naruto thought before his family was worth studying. But now he wasn't so sure anymore. Queen Sari had just told him the timetable for the next week's politics. History, crap, geography, maybe even useful if he wanted to run from his classes, etiquette, what is that? Writing, for what would he need this? And a whole lot more. It took all he had not to start crying or trying to run away. So Naruto did the only thing he could think of. He argued, but can't you let me have a bit more time for myself? I still want to learn some cool new jutsus. I never found the time to learn more than Kagebushin from my scroll. You know Kagebushin? Jiji interrupted surprised. Naruto answered carefully, yeah. This gave the king an idea. Then, how about this? You make as many clones as you can and the clones go to your lessons. That way you can do what you want and still learn everything when your clones vanish. As long as you make more than one clone, you could even learn more that way because the first clone can learn about one thing while another learns something different. Thought the original you should still train strength and stamina and such because you can't receive physical training from a clone. How does this sound? Naruto was ecstatic. He can leave the boring parts to his clones and have far less work. No doubt. His family was the greatest ever. So the queen informed all of Naruto's teachers that they would get a clone each and very likely work at the same time. None of them had a problem with this, it would work just the same after all. The only people not very happy with the arrangement were Naruto's clones. They wouldn't even be able to sleep through their classes. Private lessons were the worst. And so it began. While Naruto trained with his ways or ran laps around the training hall, most of his clones were taught about various subjects. He made more clones than he had teachers, and so the extras could learn new jutsus from the Forbidden Scroll. Finally. Meanwhile, both clones and teachers were beyond surprised. The clones, that learning this stuff was actually fun when teachers weren't being mean to him. And his teachers about the prince's obvious lack of education. He couldn't even read. Sure, he knew a few kanji and most hiragana and could understand what the text was about through the context. But he really couldn't learn that way. The boy was 12 for heaven's sake. He should have been through at least 6 years of school by now. Surely, someone of his former teachers must have realized this and should have helped him. It couldn't even be the prince's fault. He was very clever and learned things easy as long as they were explained. It was all very strange. The teachers decided what to do. If possible, they would make it a practical lesson, like playing shogi for strategy or dancing for etiquette. Some classes like ninjutsu, taijutsu, writing, kinjutsu and a few others were mostly practical anyway. If this wasn't possible, the teacher would just explain the subject to the prince instead of having him read about it. The history teacher, though, was the one who would teach Naruto how to read. And after classes they would ask the queen, who had taught the prince before, to ignore a student that couldn't even read. What were they thinking? And what were the officials thinking to let those persons teach any child, let alone the Prince of Diamond? Regardless of the setback, the prince's progress amazed all of them. He learned reading in half an hour, writing in another, 8 ninjutsus in one day, as well as 3 dances, 2 kinjutsu katas, 5 taijutsu katas and basic math that would usually take 2 weeks to learn. In his other classes, he did great as well. Naruto himself was just as amazed. This stuff was easy. And fun. No boring lectures of reading texts that didn't make sense. No explanations that nobody could understand without asking a parent or teacher for an easier version. No waiting outside because he answered wrong. No other students who laugh at him because he made a mistake. Nothing like that. Just talking and listening about fascinating topics. Even etiquette was surprisingly interesting. He never imagined that people would start a war over someone holding his dancing partner 5 centimeters too close. Strategy was quickly becoming his favorite subject. They just played a game the entire day. And Naruto even got praised for it. Hell, he couldn't remember the last time he got praised in Konoha, if he ever was. But his teachers praised him a lot even for playing a game. Another subject Naruto liked already was leadership. Most kids probably never learn things like that, but he could hardly wait for the next lesson. Before, he never thought he would see the day when he waited for a lesson to start. The day he and his teacher had started on reading faces. So he could realize when someone tried to lie to him or use him. And Naruto finally understood. He understood why Sakura would smile at him 1 second and punch him the next. He understood why Hinata would get a red face whenever she saw him. Oh, how wrong he was for his previous assumption. Flashback. The leadership teacher Suzura pointed to a specific picture. What can you see on this scene? There was a girl around 15 and really pretty. She smiled at a boy who offered her some flowers. Somehow her smile reminded Naruto of Sakura. The boy looked embarrassed but also hopeful, so he probably likes the girl and asked her out. Since she was smiling as well, she would probably accept. The Hokage had told him once that a girl smiles a lot at the boy she liked. Even if she doesn't admit liking him. Most young girls, he had explained, fear rejection so much that they cover up their interest. For example, they are mean to the one they like, especially in public. Sometimes they even go so far as to pretend they're interested in someone else just to hide their feelings. That was also the reason Naruto had asked Sakura out so much. She often smiled at him but then seemed to realize others were looking and punched him. Naruto tried to let her know that he liked her back and that it was okay to be friends or more if she wanted. Back then, he had wanted a friend so badly, not that it ever worked. Well, I think the boy just asked the girl out because he has flowers for her and looks at her expecting and hopeful but also a bit embarrassed. The girl seems happy to get asked and will probably agree. Naruto finally guessed. Almost my prince. You're absolutely right about the boy, he just asked her out on a date. But the girl's smile is artificial. Look, her jaw is very stiff and her eyes as well. That happens when somebody forces an expression on his or her face that would not be there naturally. She will reject the boy for sure. Most likely in a very blunt and brutal way. Explained Suzura. Naruto was confused, then why pretend to be happy about getting asked out? Hesitantly his teacher answered, I'm not sure, maybe to give the boy hope before shooting him down. Or maybe to pretend to be nice without making the effort to see things from his point. It depends on their relationship before. Well, so much for Sakura liking him. She probably had a good laugh whenever he had asked her out. And that was almost every day for 2 years. What a waste of time. Anyway, it didn't matter anymore, he doubted he would see her ever again. That was probably for the best. Suzura didn't know that she had just thrown the prince for a loop and simply took the next picture. This time of a girl who watched a boy train. The boy either didn't notice or didn't care, he just focused on throwing kunai. The girl watched him with a very red face and pressed her hand over her impressive décolleté. She reminded Naruto of Hinata. Similar shades of red. The boy trains and doesn't mind the girl. The girl wants to train too, but can't because of her fever, the prince more asked than answered. Suzura bite back a smile, not really. The boy probably hasn't noticed the girl and the girl doesn't have a fever. She is blushing because she likes the boy. See? She pays more attention to him than to his kunai and put her hand close to her heart. She is probably rather shy. When a girl sees a boy that she loves, her eyes become really soft, like she loses her focus. And her gaze follow the boy everywhere, as if nothing else even exists. That also applies to confident girls. Some shy girls quickly look away when their special boy notices them. So you should look for expressions to read when the person think you aren't looking. That way, it will be far easier to get an opinion of a person. The results will also be closer to the truth this way. Not only with girls and their feelings. So what would she be like if the boy asked her out, Suzura-sensei? Naruto asked, thinking of Hinata. Interesting question. I think she would turn completely red, maybe even get weak at the knees, but in the end she would agree for sure. She answered. By now, the prince was rather confused. Hinata had no reason to be shy. She could have easily become his first, best and maybe only friend. Back then, he had wanted a friend so badly. Okay, it was official. Girls make absolutely no sense. Naruto was still stunned about all this news, but class wasn't over yet. So he put these thoughts in the back of his head for later and just took the next picture. Flashback end. What for revelations? The only thing more surprising to Naruto was that he actually enjoyed school and that reading was fun when the text makes sense. In Konoha, Shikamaru had questions over questions. Many adults had never really made much sense when it came to Naruto. But this was insane. The majority celebrated losing him like an achievement. Seriously, his pranks weren't that bad. Most were even quite funny. Shikamaru had been thinking about Naruto's departure and the strange reactions for 2 weeks now, and he still hadn't made any progress. Heck, so far, not a single theory he had come up with could explain Naruto's friendship with the Hokage and his trouble with most of the village at the same time. It drove him crazy. Even his own father was acting weird. Sure, Shikamaru expected him to be worried about any Konoha ninja. But despite being a jonin, it was almost as if he was scared of Naruto, that just couldn't be. Right. After all, Naruto was only a genin. Hell, he wasn't even a genin. Since he failed the test, again. At first, Shikamaru thought the adults were that scarred because Konoha had lost an important scroll. But this belief went out of the window when Iruka-sensei informed everyone that only Jonin or Anbu are allowed to confront Naruto. Everyone else should tell him that Mizuki's scheme had been discovered and Naruto can just go back to the village. In case he didn't believe this, they are to let Naruto go and report back where they had seen him. Under no circumstances are they to fight him or even restrain him. This was ridiculous. For heaven's sake, the guy was the weakest of the whole class. Even with the scroll, Naruto couldn't be dangerous. The scroll was written for Anbus. Most likely he wouldn't even understand what the text was about. So, why? Why was everyone so on edge about one little boy that wasn't even a genin? And why on earth was he still not found? Shikamaru had seen the search party. Pretty much all jonins, Anbus and hunternins that were in Konoha at the time. The first time he had seen the large group, he just thought that he wanted some of the stuff the Hokage was smoking. And later he believed he actually did smoke that stuff when the group came back without either the scroll or Naruto. Seriously, what the hell? Half of each the Inuzuka, Aburame and Hyuga clan weren't able to locate one little boy. Not to mention the Anbus and dogs. He had always thought the ninjas, chasing Naruto around after a prank, were just playing with him. Well, apparently not. Shikamaru told his father about all this, but he couldn't get any more out of the troublesome man. He would have asked Hinata for more information, but after the yelling she put the Hokage through, he really didn't want to get on her bad side. This was all so far beyond troublesome. Sayori hadn't been on any mission for over 10 years. Still she was very careful. She had never been in Konoha before and really didn't want to get caught. Sure, she could force her way out if necessary, and no elemental country would go to war against Diamond anyway. But Sayori didn't want to hurt any friends of the prince. And nobody in Konoha should know just yet where Prince Naruto was. He should tell his friends about everything himself. Getting in the village was easy enough, now she only had to find the documents. The tower was the best protected place in Konoha, so any documents about someone as important as Prince Naruto would surely be there. Probably in one of the higher floors or the basement. During a shift change of the Anbus, Sayori silently jumped up to a window in the Hokage tower and waited in the dark office. Two Anbus of the new shift came in her direction with about as much stealth as a group of first-year academy students on a field trip. She considered killing them so they couldn't raise the alarm. But quickly decided against it. It wouldn't do to kill someone Naruto-sama was fond of. And the notion either of the Anbus would notice her was laughable. They were too busy with the latest gossip to pay attention to anything. Seriously, dog. I can't believe Hokage-sama still wants to search for the brat. I mean, one lucky hunter probably found him already the very first day and did everyone a long overdue favor. And hunters should be able to let a body disappear. I can understand Hokage-sama. After all, if the Jinchuriki ends up in Kumo, or worse with Orochimaru, he would likely prepare to strike back at Konoha, possibly together with his new allies. And I for one can live without seeing the Kyuubi another time in his full glory. Thank you very much. Some like me just won't be able to relax until the boy is found. Rabbit, right now I don't care if they find him alive or dead, as long as they do find him. Even the Hokage prefers Uzumaki dead to missing. I guess you're right, dog. After Mizuki's stunt, the brat probably wants nothing more than to get back at Konoha. Sayori's heart was racing. Not because she was on a mission. Not even because this mission could generate quite a political fallout. Nor because off-enemy ninjas walking by close enough for her to hear their heartbeat. She was used to those situations well enough. No. What made her blood cold like ice was one word. Uzumaki. They were talking about the prince. And they rather had him dead than outside their control. No wonder, the prince traveled alone and hardly spoke about his past. He probably ran away from here. What else had they said? Mizuki's stunt. Maybe an important incident. She would have to find out what exactly happened. They also called him Jinchuriki and mentioned the Kyuubi. Well, the elemental countries were usually too weak to fight a Biju. That could be the reason why they were so scared of Naruto-sama. They were especially worried about Naruto-sama ending up in Kumo, where with Orochimaru. Yeah, as far as she knew, those were the groups that had one grudge or another with Konoha. Naturally, they wouldn't want somebody they feared with those groups. Okay, now she was calm enough again. Sayori sneaked from door to door, always looking for an archive of some kind. After over 24 doors, 7 more patrols and way too many spider-filled hiding places. Really, those Konoha inns should clean the tower a bit more often or more thoroughly. She found a promising room. Shelves were everywhere like in a library. But instead of books or scrolls, they hold boxes and paperwork. Sayori closed the door soundlessly. Sure, she was now in pitch black darkness, but those patrols wouldn't come in here. They were far too lazy. With a still shaking head, she made her way to the middle of the room and read titles of some boxes to understand the system of ordering. It was sorted by name with A close to the door. Well, this made everything simple. Within a few seconds, Sayori found the prince's documents and those of any other Uzumaki and Namikaze. She was surprised of how much documents about Naruto-sama were there and decided to take a look while putting everything in sealing scrolls. Maybe she would find a hint about that Mizuki stunt the first patrol had been talking about. But what she read was so disgusting, inhumane and just plain wrong that only the experience of decades kept her from flat out leveling this whole village. His own father was basically a hero, and his only dying wish was for Naruto-sama to be treated as one too. But instead the village wanted to execute him before his father's body was even cold. On the first day of his life he survived 5 different attempted assassinations. One of those from the doctor that was supposed to heal him after the second attempt. His medical files didn't become much better. He had more often than not some sort of injuries. Mainly those kinds a fresh ninja would receive when barely surviving a misranked mission that should have been handled by a veteran in the first place. The council decided to kick him out of the orphanage when he was only 5. When the prince should never have been there at all. The Hokage should have put him somewhere where he was safe and would be raised like his standing demanded. Even without knowing about Naruto-sama's connection to Diamond. After all, the Hokage obviously knew about his family in Yuzu since he gave the prince his mother's maiden name. Basically, the village completely ignored not only the dying wish of their greatest hero, but also proper protocol, basic human rights and plain common sense, and let a 5-year-old live alone. In an hostile environment. And then complained about his pranks. Pranks, that was another big part in Naruto-sama's files. He had done more pranks than she missions. And with more success too. Sayori smiled at a few pictures like a painted Hokage monument, an academy with its roof upside down, Anbus covered in orange paint, and about 200 pieces of pink lingerie, with what looked like little Uchiha fans on each, scattered around the village. A small corner of her mind wondered whether the lingerie was already pink before the prank. In Naruto-sama's file were even a few incidents mentioned where the culprit was never proven, but everyone suspected him. Another interesting part of his file included a few psychological files and notes about his life. The Sandaime had written most of the notes and recorded every little thing about Naruto-sama, from his favorite food, ramen, to his strange love matters, the crush of Hinata Hyuga on him, his crush on Sakura Haruno, an unbelievable long list of persons with a crush on Sasuke Uchiha, including Sakura Haruno, and Naruto-sama's jealousy of Sasuke Uchiha, to his expected military power, high stamina and resilience, ninjutsu, probably not very obedient, to his dream, Hokage. Sayori didn't dare to look at any of the recorded discussions of the council about Naruto-sama. She would most likely explode before finishing the first page and level the Hokage tower on principle. Making a mental note to get some distance away when the queen read that part, preferable with a mountain between them, Sayori looked for reports about incidents that happened to the prince. She probably shouldn't, but she wanted to know at least the full name of this Mizuki fellow. That way she could find a report on his stunt in the guy's files. Thankfully Sayori had found the incident rather fast. But what she found got her blood boiling for the umpteenth time this evening. To use any child that way and from a teacher no less, no wonder the prince didn't talk about this place. But worst of all was actually how the Konoha council tried to use this to execute Naruto-sama. For heaven's sake, they basically tried to kill an innocent little boy for listening to his teacher. Those bastards. The files of the other Namikas and Uzumaki were a lot smaller, and what Sayori read, while putting them in sealing scrolls, was mostly normal. Those ninjas were apparently rather strong for the elemental nations, but that still only added to the sins of the village. After all, the village had mistreated the sole heir to those clans. The most interesting of those files were actually those of Naruto-sama's parents. They had each a personal letter for the prince and all of the jutsu scrolls of their respective clans with blood and chakra seals. Clever. The blood must be from a descendant and could have been taken from the baby, but since the chakra must be from the same person as the blood, nobody could open those scrolls before the prince learned to use chakra. And by the time he learned it, he was clearly old enough to understand what the scrolls were about and that he was entitled to them. Well, the Yondaime was clearly a caring father and an expert in human nature. After putting away the last documents about Naruto-sama's inheritance, Sayori silently made her way out of the tower. She would stop shortly in the prince's apartment and take anything he had left behind. Maybe she could make his day with this. Surprisingly, the apartment was rather bare. If you exclude anything that was broken, Sayori couldn't even find a single toy. Maybe the villagers already took everything of value. Well, at least she found a few photos. With her objective secure in her scrolls, the director of all crystals was on her way back to Diamond. All the while wondering what the queen would do once she read those files. Naruto was beat. Beyond beat. So far beyond that he didn't even complain about the vegetables in his meal. No matter how much fun he had, learning in one day what others learned in 3 weeks was damn exhausting. And he would probably study equal bulks every day for the foreseeable future. Hell, he was even too tired to explore the basement. Or just prank someone. That had to be a first in his entire life. Thankfully dinner was pretty quiet and small. Gran looked sometimes at him, but didn't ask anything. Maybe she felt bad for making him study so hard. Well, better than repeating all lessons. Naruto really didn't feel like explaining how his day was. It would just take forever. He actually did enjoy today, but he wouldn't be able to go into details. Too much happened. Even Naruto's guards were silent, they knew how hard their prince worked today. And all of them felt incredibly proud. They had naturally only protected the original, but seeing the prince exercise for almost a whole day straight, not to mention, when they changed shifts, some of the girls went past quite a few Naruto clones. And they all worked just as hard as the original prince. Diamond would for sure prosper under someone like him. After dinner Queen Sari told Naruto that his room was renovated while he studied. A few things may still be not perfect, but the room was at least ready for him, so he could recover and rest for the evening. Naruto dragged himself towards his room, a little worried about those changes Gran mentioned. With trembling fingers and after a quick prayer that his room wasn't now pink or otherwise overly girly, he opened the door. A single look around and he dared to breathe again. Thankfully, his room still looked bearable, even a little better than before. The carpet was obviously new and in a light blue, like the sky. Naruto patted it shortly to confirm. Yes, it's incredible soft and comfortable. The wall also had the same color. Making the room look like it was floating just under some clouds. Naruto flopped down on his new bed and watched his guard come in. The bed was far larger than the previous, as were the wardrobe and desk. Thankfully the paintings weren't changed. A few shelves were added, some already filled with books, others still empty. 2 maids put his new kimonos in the wardrobe, while 3 others still put books on shelves, and still another 2 maids put the stuff of his guards away. He couldn't see his toys anywhere. Maybe they were still somewhere else. The young prince opened his mouth to offer his help to the maids, but closed it again. He was still too tired to move. Most likely he wouldn't be of any help, even if they accepted. But what to do? It was still too early to sleep and he was mentally and physically too exhausted to study, train or explore. He also couldn't play some games with any of his guards because his toys were somewhere else, not to mention it would be pretty mean to play while others worked hard to tidy up his room. His gaze trailed through the room again and stayed on one of the bookshelves. Well, school actually was fun today and his history teacher did advise him to read something he found interesting. Working hard for school was probably almost as good as helping those girls. So maybe he should take a look and see if there were any good books there. His grandparents choose them after all. Mind made up, Naruto went to the fullest shelf and skimmed over the titles. A little orange book caught his attention. Icha Paradise. Well, if there was any place that was called Paradise, Naruto sure as hell wanted to know about it. And if it was just a little story for entertainment, it had to be cool too. Besides, a book that was selected by his own grandparents and was on top of that orange just had to be good, right? "Hey ladies, does any one of you know a place called Icha Paradise?" asked Naruto. That caught the attention of everyone and all heads were shaking. Even the maids didn't know of it. "Never heard of such a book, but it sounds more like a romance than an actual place to me. Do you mind reading out loud? I'm kinda curious." "That's a great idea, Miyuki. Maybe His Majesty could read it to us all so it would be like a shared book," suggested AM. She was the only one of his guards who had witnessed that he learned to read just earlier today and wanted him to practice it. If all of them shared the book together, the prince would probably agree to read when one of the girls asked him to. That way she could make the prince practice more. After a short nod, Naruto began to read aloud while his guards made themselves comfortable. Note: I'm a woman and the explanations of those guards are actually what I would think in those situations. Icha Paradise. The journey begins. The farewell was even worse than he could have imagined. Of course Rijija knew some of the girls would cry, but seeing tears in all those beautiful eyes almost hurt physically. Two of the younger girls vowed to stay virgin for him. It was very touching and certainly something to look forward to his return. But it couldn't be helped, the world waited and he had always wanted to travel. Some of the guys looked partly happy with his leave, probably because they now had a chance at the girls or at least believed so, and were comforting the girls. The entire village came to see him off and to wish him a safe journey. After 2 hours of travel, Rijija saw a young lady. Her kimono was stuck in a tree stump and almost completely destroyed, revealing her melon-sized, soft and fair complexion bosom. "Good evening, lovely lady. What does a beautiful woman like you do in such a dangerous place? By the way, you should really get out of such destroyed clothes." "Well, I'm on my way to visit my sister." "Oh, and thank you for the advice, mister, I should have thought of this before. By the way, what's your name?" With this she got out of her kimono and stood in the moonlight with just a bra and slip. The slime figure was easy to see, even in the night, and the moon reflected on her fair and round the kimono laid forgotten on the forest floor. "I'm Rijija, hero of all children, charmer of women and bravest man in the world. And who are you, my beautiful young lady?" "Sakuya." "Well, beautiful, want me to keep you warm tonight? Maybe I should help you carry your assets, after all a young lady shouldn't lift something so heavy." Sakuya laughed lightly and smiled shy at her savior. Such a smile usually promised a reward later in the night. Before Naruto read more than 2 complete pages, laughter interrupted him and he looked up to a very strange sight. Maya's, Kaji's, Rika's and even AM's eyes twitched rather violently. Toriko, Mariko and Miyuki were laughing and Haruhi was passed out with a face that could be considered neon scarlet. Ayako and Kazami also had very red faces, though at least they were still awake even if their eyes seemed to try to leave their place and ran for dear life. The maids that put Naruto's things away all had similar reactions. As varied as those reactions were, none of them were what Naruto expected. He found the book incredibly boring and was sure that at least one of them would fall asleep before the end of the first chapter. He just had hoped that person wasn't him, but the story was neither exciting nor funny. Nothing really happened. And again, he had already realized earlier this same day that girls made absolutely no sense. "Naruto-sama, please promise me that you will never be like that," AM pleaded. Like Rijija. The author of this so-called book was clearly never in any serious relationship. Otherwise he would know better than to think or write. Women would like a behavior like Rijija showed. "So you wouldn't like it, AM?" "No sane woman likes to be ignored," Kaji insisted. But Rijija didn't ignore any women, he even talked to them, right AM? "No, Naruto-sama." He bragged to them. He was mostly the only one who talked. And he clearly didn't listen to any of them. There is a very huge difference. The small details usually show your true beliefs better than anything else. And far too often, they show the opposite of what those people say. For example, Rijija hears only pleas of girls that they will stay virgin for him or say otherwise something flattering of him. No guy beside him had said anything. Also Rijija had only asked intimate questions. Normal women don't answer those questions to strangers. Of course there are women that don't understand the difference between being loved and desired. But any girl with enough sense of self-worth and who demands any standard of a potential boyfriend would at best ignore Rajija's questions. More likely though, they would beat him up for disrespecting their privacy. You still aren't exactly happy at being surrounded by us all the time, right? Well, just imagine we would have watched you getting dressed or bathing and then joked about the size of your member, just like Rajija made fun of Sakuya's. My point exactly. Well, at least it is funny to imagine how real woman would react to such a man. Through Toriko, he would need a hospital before even closing his mouth. This was not only a pervy book, but also complete wrong. Naruto couldn't believe it. Meanwhile in Whirlpool the old daimyo didn't believe what he was reading either. The Queen of Diamond rarely dealt with any of the elemental nations, much less the smaller countries around them. So a letter from her was pretty unusual. Though not nearly as strange as what was written in it. Dear Daimyo of Whirlpool, yesterday a young boy arrived in Titan. Due to reasons I rather not send per mail, an ancestor table seal was used on the boy. Surprisingly your name also appeared on the result. The boy's name is Naruto Uzumaki. A copy of the result as well as a few photos of Naruto are attached. Since Naruto is closer related to you than us, you are well within your right to demand custody of him. However, since he is our only known heir, we would like to discuss a possible arrangement. We would also like to hear about our daughter Kari. We had believed her dead for over 20 years now and would like to know if she is alright. In case she doesn't want to come back to Diamond, we won't force her. We only wish to know what happened to her and whether or not she is alive, healthy and happy. Please contact us about Naruto and Kari as soon as possible. Yours sincerely, Sari Shira Queen of Diamond and Shira King of Diamond. Next to the letter were a few photos and a scroll. Ancestor table of Naruto Uzumaki. Tiled mother plus father. Mother grandmother plus grandfather. Father grandmother plus grandfather. Naruto Uzumaki Kushina Uzumaki plus Minato Namikaze. Kushina Uzumaki Kari Uzumaki plus Sato Uzumaki. Minato Namikaze Tsunade Senju plus Jiraiya Kaiushu. Kari Uzumaki Sari Shira plus Shira. Sato Uzumaki. That couldn't be right. Kushina's child died in the Kyuubi attack and his wife was Rina, not Kari, but Rina had no memories when she arrived in Whirlpool. Maybe she really was the daughter of Diamond's queen. Well, that would explain her stamina. All thoughts just went blank as the daimyo saw the first picture. A young blonde boy was seen riding on a horse. True, his hair and eyes were from Minato, but his face and especially his smile was all Kushina. There was no doubt, no need for the ancestor table and no room for arguments, that boy was his grandson. He had to go to Diamond. Yesterday. Father, is something wrong? Pension, get an escort ready, at least 20 men. They are to prepare for travel to Titan and Diamond. We will decide there the length of our visit. It can be anything between 1 day and 3 weeks. And pack for yourself as well. Of course. But why all of a sudden? Somebody appeared in Titan who looks a lot like Kushina and Minato. A 12-year-old boy. Naruto Uzumaki. I will prepare everything immediately. With that his son was gone, faster than he could blink. Probably faster than Minato's favorite jutsu, too. The daimyo chuckled quietly to himself while preparing for the long journey as well. Hokage-sama. I have urgent news. The daimyo of Whirlpool was seen on his way towards the south. He may come to Konoha. The sandaime tried desperately to keep a normal face when Izumo barged in his office. He looked at the very out-of-breath Chunin. There just couldn't be more difference between the young man and the old cage. Izumo was grinning like mad and close to bouncing. He obviously believed that Whirlpool wanted to renew their old friendship. Meanwhile the old man felt his age clearer than ever before. The daimyo of Whirlpool had not left his home for over 2 decades. Though he would have come to Konoha 12 years ago if the Hokage hadn't lied to him about his grandson's survival. Or later, if he found out the truth. But then he would have marched to Konoha with his best samurais. Hell, he almost started a war over losing Kushina and Naruto anyway. Even well believing that Whirlpool had nothing to gain from winning such a war. If Naruto somehow got to Indral, the daimyo would know immediately he had been lied to. Naruto looked too much like the yondaime, everybody in Whirlpool would make the obvious connection and bring him to his grandfather. The only reason nobody in Konoha had seen it was because they all saw the fox whenever they looked at the boy. After 12 years of being sure to do the best for Konoha, the Hokage actually regretted his decision to lie about Naruto's heritage. He had wanted to keep the boy close to Konoha. That was the reason why he tried to play matchmaker with Naruto and that Haruno girl and why he had told so many stories about the yondaime and explained the then 3-year-old a glorified version of what a Hokage does. Predictably, the young Naruto decided the very next day to become the best Hokage ever. If the boy just had made enough bonds to the village, his family wouldn't attack Konoha after finding him. Or even take him away because that could make Naruto hate them. Something the Uzumakas would never let happen. It would have been perfect, Konoha would have kept their Jinchuriki and the heir to the Namikaze clan. Once the boy would be old enough, he would have gotten the sealed scrolls of his parents and very likely become even more powerful. For Naruto, Whirlpool would have renewed the old alliance and opened trade roads again. It would have been perfect. But now this plan had backfired with more force than all 9 Biju put together. Naruto never made a single friend, the adults hated him, the children made it a competition to see who could be the cruelest to him, and Sakura had used him as a punching bag. The only ones who didn't hate Naruto were the Ichirokas, who saw the boy as a main income and he himself. But in the end Naruto would hate him the most because he was the one who actively kept him from his family. If the daimyo of Whirlpool ever found out, he would have his army at Konoha's doors in an instant. And the old Hokage wasn't stupid enough to believe they could win against this foe. Despite his heart rate getting out of control and the blood that thumped loud in his ear, the Hokage calmly asked for a detailed report. He would need any information he could get. The carriage with around 20 Whirlpool samurais was signed 2 days ago on the eastern border. The carriage held the crest of the Uzumaki clan. They were heading south on the road towards fire. They even saw the Batasai, Hokage-sama, I see. Tell the border patrol to let them through and to inform me as soon as possible where exactly they are headed. Avoid any fights. Should the Uzumaki approach one of them, be polite and answer them only with public information. When Izumo left, the old Kage looked over Konoha. He prayed silently that the Uzumaki headed to the capital or only passed through fire. And that they would never meet Naruto. They didn't take their army with them, so they obviously didn't know about Naruto yet. Maybe Konoha would stay lucky, peaceful and intact. Well, there was nothing he could do right now, aside waiting and praying. In the meeting room of the Majimi clan, Mariko had never before talked with the clan head Tenchi about politics. Sure, she had sometimes asked her what was discussed in the latest council meeting. But she only ever heard that she was still young and should enjoy her time. Or another non-answer that amounted to the same thing. She couldn't really argue with it. After all, she wasn't the heir or anywhere close to becoming clan head. And so didn't need any knowledge of politics. Which made this meeting even weirder. Tenchi-sama's appearance didn't really help either. She looked like she was in a strange mood. More hopeful than Mariko had ever seen her. But also nervous. It was so very odd. The fact that other high-ranking clan members were also waiting for little Mariko only added to that. Good evening, Tenchi-sama. You called for me? Yes. Please sit down, Mariko-chan. What I am going to tell you is still top secret but will be revealed in around 2 weeks at the latest. It's important that you don't talk about it with anyone but those in this room. At least before the official announcement. Apparently the queen still had an heir somewhere. A male heir even. He actually has the bloodline, but it wouldn't really matter if he didn't. I'm also not sure if he was hidden for his protection or if the queen was surprised by him. Either way, her great-grandson Prince Naruto Uzumaki lives now in the palace. He is around your age and will be in your year at the academy. The classes will probably change, but you will still be the closest to him of our clan. Because of this, I want you to become friends with the prince. If you manage more. Great. But that's not really necessary. He will have enough girls to choose from, so his line shouldn't be in danger as long as he lives long enough. Your year will also get a few more children because other countries will receive notes about the prince. Together with invitations for a few of their girls. They're given the opportunity to become one of Prince Naruto's wives, though in the end he decides. You have 3 objectives. First, become the prince's friend. That one will probably be the hardest because everyone will try the same. Second, ensure he will be a good king. For example, you can help him learn on important subjects or tell him about Damon's customs. This one will probably be the easiest because most adults, not to mention the queen herself, will help him at this. The last objective is actually to ensure he gets good wives. Basically that means you take a closer look at his favorites. You will help those who are likely to become supportive wives and good queens. And show all information on the others to me and if possible to the prince. I will take the information you give me to the queen and the council. Everyone in this room, including myself, will make it a priority to help you with your objectives. It's not only important for our clan, but for the whole country. If the prince ends up with selfish wives, it can become a disaster for his family, our clan and everyone in Diamond. Do you understand? Mariko was still dazed with all this news. A boy with a nature bloodline. The future king no less. And she just got the most important mission since the last war. It was all a bit much, but she would manage. She had to. A quick glance around showed equally stunned expressions everywhere. Ah, good, it wasn't just her. With a second glance she looked what sort of support she would get for this. And those involved more than anything really drove home just how important her mission was. There were Suni, the psychologist, and her sister Tamako, the stylist. Even Haruhi-sama was there. She was the oldest of the whole clan and was still famous, despite not being seen in public for the last 4 decades. She only recognized her because of a few old photos. Haruhi-sama was awesome as a seductress and at understanding people, including talking sense into someone and convincing them of her point of view. It was rumored that she alone had prevented or started over a dozen wars. Well, she definitively had the best chances to compete. And it wasn't like she had to marry a stranger. Just to help him. And make sure he would be good for Damon. And if she does fall in love with him, her clan would support her with that too. Mariko gave a quick nod and listened to Haruhi-sama as she started to plan for the first meeting between the prince and herself. Maybe they would even fall in love with each other in the meeting room of the Kin clan. Hirako was on her way to Raiko-sama. She had already done a few missions for the clan and knew the clan head will give her another one. She was only ever called into the meeting room for missions. It wasn't really a big deal. So far she had done all her missions perfectly. Well, it wasn't like they were that difficult, and as the granddaughter of the clan head, it was just normal to be perfect. To be honest, most of the Kin clan were perfect, so it wasn't really surprising that she was the same. Two other girls were there as well. Tama and Tomiko, if she remembered right. Both from the branch house. Oh well, she had to get used to working with weaker girls at some point. Those two were at least also from the Kin clan. So it shouldn't be such a big deal. And it was only for a short mission. She would manage. Good evening, Raiko-sama. Ah, you're here, Kureko-chan. Please sit down. I have some very interesting news. It's still confidential, but anyway. The queen has found an heir. Apparently a boy. Her great-grandson to be precise. Prince Naruto Uzumaki lives in the palace now and currently gets private lessons. Only his teachers, family and the guards are allowed near him. However, I managed to get a bit of information about him. His father was the leader of a ninja village in Fire Country and his mother was from Yuzu. So the prince was born and raised in the west, probably in the village of his father. Two of his grandparents and his father were legends there. Even without the nature bloodline. Which the prince actually has. Prince Naruto has also apparently inherited some other bloodline and with a bit of training can become quite strong. He will be a perfect husband for you, Kureko-chan. Especially since the prince is still young enough to be properly taught. He will be in your year at school, starting the coming term. There you are to get close to him. He will offer opportunities to other countries to send girls to the school as well. So the prince can choose who he wants to marry from over the world. Tama and Tomiko, you will support Kureko any way possible and make sure no other girls get close to the prince. But be careful. If the queen or the prince's guard suspects foul play, they will keep Kureko-chan away from him. So only prank-like attacks. Maybe a prank accidentally gone wrong at most. But mainly spreading rumors of the girls to make sure the prince is less interested in some of them and doing what Kureko tells you to do. Thought you may want to cooperate with people from Fire Country. For a bit. They could be a great help and will have easier access to him. So it'll be a good idea to become friends when they arrive. I will tell you what I can get about each of the fire people and their relationship to the prince. But that Naruto boy, our clan can far easier get the throne than before. After all, the wife of a king is naturally the queen. Thought, if he really can't be convinced to marry you, as long as you are close, you can always put something in his food. Right, Kureko-chan. Anyway, there's still some time until the announcement, not to mention until school starts. I suggest you use the time to expand your wardrobe and maybe even visit a beauty salon. Kureko smiled, the mission may not be so short, but it sure as hell would be quite interesting. A boy with great position, genes and power, that was exactly what she wanted. And with a throne as a wedding gift, she was sure the prince and her would be the perfect couple. That had to be true love, after all. In the meeting room of the Fushigi clan, Akira opened the door with trembling fingers. Not really surprising, the last time she was here, Hikari-sama explained that her parents died. They had actually been the last in-duty ninjas of the Fushigi clan. Now their once proud clan was reduced to one retired elder now clan head and 4 girls. There were rumor of a crystal, who was originally from the Fushigi clan. But all crystals were sworn to the royal family. And most took another name to officially leave their family. So it was practically impossible to receive help from her, even if she actually did exist. Besides, what help would she be able to give? A quick glance around showed her entire clan in attendance, not that there were much left. But it meant that there was no death to be reported. Also, Hikari-sama was obviously in a good mood. Well, a strange one, actually. The clan head seemed happy one minute and sad the next. And was that hope glistening in her eyes? Far more relaxed, Akira greeted everyone and sat down to listen to the elder. Hello Akira-chan, Hashi-chan, Mika-chan and Tsukino-chan. I have some great news, but you have to promise not to talk about it outside of this room. Not even between yourselves. Alright. You all know that the Kin clan is likely to succeed the throne after Queen Sari. Because the queen has no children, you may not know is, she actually had a daughter once. Her name was Kari and she went to travel a bit before taking the throne. But she disappeared and everyone thought she had died. Leaving the queen too old to carry another child and without other living family. Because the queen had no heir, everyone assumed the next queen would come from either the Kin, the Majimi or our clan. Because those were the strongest clans then. Unfortunately our clan started to decline around that time. So by now, it would need a miracle for our clan to receive the throne. On the other hand, the Majimi clan didn't want the responsibility back then and most likely they don't want it now either. That leaves the Qin clan as only possible successor after the queen. Akira already knew this. She also knew that her clan's abilities were the best and sometimes only way to fight the abilities of the Qin clan. Or that some adults discussed how the Qin clan was responsible for many deaths in the Fushigi clan. It didn't really help that most of her clan died while someone from the Qin clan was nearby. More often than not on a mission in the middle of nowhere. Of course she also realized that the Qin clan had no real opposition to the throne. Nobody wanted them in charge, but the only ones who could have fought them were the adults of her clan. Unfortunately neither Hikari-sama nor herself, much less any of her cousins, could fight someone from the Qin clan. At least if that person was even remotely average. And people without her clan's jutsu stood almost no chance against them. It was pretty scary to think of the future. Especially since the Qin clan will probably destroy even the last of her clan. There was nothing positive about that issue. But Hikari-sama was actually in a great mood despite raising the topic and she did say she had good news. It couldn't be an alliance with the Qin clan. Akira was sure of it. They had simply done too much damage to be forgiven. Besides nobody with half a brain considered that clan trustworthy. Maybe the Majimi clan is finally ready to accept the throne. Obvious to the youngsters' thought, Hikari continued. Kari actually had a child and this child found its way to the palace. So the queen now has an heir. Even more interesting, the heir is actually a boy. His name is Naruto Uzumaki and as far as I know he still has the nature bloodline. Prince Naruto will be announced in a few days. Until then I will try to get as much information as possible on him. All I know right now is that the prince and girls from all over the world will attend Akira-chan's year at the academy. Akira-chan, you are of the same age as the prince. You should try to become one of his wives. I know I basically ask you to sacrifice your own happiness, but if the royal family don't protect our clan, you and your cousins will likely die in one of your first missions. I'm sorry. She froze. She didn't move a single muscle. Maybe she couldn't move even if she had wanted to. All Akira had wanted was a small family of her own, some children for her to pamper and for the clan to grow. A husband to love and be loved. It never seemed unreasonable or even unusual. But now it just wasn't fair. She never even fooled herself like some other girls. Akira knew she would have to share her husband and that there would be occasional quarrels. Some with her husband and others with her marriage sisters. But now even such a simple dream was unreachable. Akira startled when she saw the first wet spot. A strangely calm part of her mind remembered that the roof was rebuilt only 2 months ago. It couldn't be rain. So she bowed deeply and formally to the head of her clan. Thankful that her eyes were hidden. She bowed before even noticing that she actually could move again. She would worry about breathing again later. Maybe. For now Akira had enough to worry about. Hikari-sama explained she would give them all information she could get her hands on and promised to help as much as possible. Hashi-chan, Mika-chan and Tsukino-chan were quick to promise the same as well. Everyone sounded hoarse. As if they had been screaming at each other for 2 days straight. Hell, she would have preferred a screaming match. Hikari-sama quickly ushered the younger kids out of the room and told them to take some time to think of a few ideas to help Akira with her mission. To the oldest she just said to take as much time as she needed. Damn. Akira didn't want time. Or help for that matter. She wanted to keep her dream and not chase after a guy she didn't like in the first place. But if she failed the mission, either her clan would die completely or one of her cousins would have to end up with the prince. There was simply no way around it. They needed royal protection. And the only way to get it was from Prince Naruto. Well, without him Akira would never get old enough to start a family anyway. Is it a bright side that her dream would have been impossible in any case? Hopefully the prince could fall in love with her. And maybe she would come to like him as well, but true love seemed basically impossible for her now. Similar scenes happened all over Titan. And soon those scenes would happen all over the world. The coming school year was sure to be entertaining at the very least. Hiashi had a bad week. Granted, he couldn't remember having a good week since his joy over Hanabi's birth calmed down, but this was getting ridiculous. The political influence of the Hyuga clan had steadily weakened for ages, but at least they still had been feared or revered for their fighting style and tracking abilities. The Byakugan together with the Gentle Fist had always been reason enough for a healthy amount of respect from others. That was right until his firstborn had attended the academy and made a mockery out of the Gentle Fist. Hinata had been the first Hyuga ever to end up in the lower half of their class ranking. Not all of the clan managed to be best of their years, but everyone else had been at least in the top 10. And even then, in most cases there was an exceptional ninja in their year who took the top spot like Kakashi Haddock or Minato Namikaze, making the first place flat out unreachable. But Hinata she had never done well under pressure. Unfortunately, it wouldn't help her much if others went easier on her. At any mission Hinata would do, the problems and dangers could grow very fast. Better, she learned to stand and fight in the safety of the village. The problem was, she just didn't. Hinata never got used to pressure. At all. It wasn't even a lack of abilities. Hiashi could have accepted that. It would also be easier to handle as well. If you are bad at something, you train until you're better. Easy and simply. Okay, maybe quite time-consuming, but definitely doable. Especially with an entire clan helping her. But what do you do if someone doesn't fight despite being able to? And he knew Hinata could fight incredible well. Hiashi had seen with his own eyes what probably was her very first, and until Uzumaki left only, real fight. Last year on Valentine's Day she had gone to the Uzumaki boy's home and placed chocolate for him in front of his door. But then the Uchiha came from the street. Hiashi had wondered what the boy wanted from the Jinchuriki. He still remembered his own surprise when his daughter was suddenly faster than Mido guy on a mountain-sized sugar high no less and ran into hiding. Right up the wall. But the chakra technique tree walking and stayed there. When just the day before she had fallen off after the third step. Looking back, Hiashi realized that Hinata's tree walking was the first sign that she was better and stronger than anyone believed. Including herself. His next surprise was not 5 minutes later when the Uchiha boy took Uzumaki's chocolate and threw it in the bin. He mumbled something to himself too quiet for Hiashi to hear. But he didn't need to anyway. Hiashi could read lips like any Hyuga. There. The dobe should be silent for a while when he doesn't get anything for Valentine's. Hopefully, without him interrupting the classes I can finally learn something useful. The Ashi couldn't keep the frown from his face. A Jinchuriki was a military asset. And their loyalty was of paramount importance. He could understand people being afraid of the Uzumaki boy, avoiding him and making sure the children stayed away from him. But agonizing him for such childish, selfish reason. That was very stupid, not to mention unnecessary, and beyond dangerous. True, the child didn't know this, but still that was no real excuse for such a pointless and underhanded action. Against an orphan, no less. The sudden move reminded Hiashi that he wasn't the only one present who could read lips. Hinata looked furious. He had never before seen her even the slightest bit annoyed. Actually he had been convinced shy, little Hinata was completely incapable of feeling any anger. But right now looked his gentle little girl more like a mixture of seething tiger and starving dragon. In the next 10 minutes his timid daughter, who hadn't won a single spar in school or at home and only wasn't last in class because of paper tests, proceeded to pummel the top student of her year within an inch of his life. That was an eye-opener if he had ever seen one. After getting her revenge on the self-proclaimed avenger, Hinata ran away, trying to hide her tears. As the boy dragged himself away, Hiashi considered threatening the Uchiha boy so he wouldn't sue Hinata. But then decided against it. Nobody would believe him anyway. Not against shy little Hinata. The Uchiha never sought retribution though, most likely because he didn't want anyone to know of his loss. The boy certainly never acknowledged Hinata's power in school. It was kind of telling in regards to the future. Interesting, the Uchiha boy was the most popular, but what he showed had been only lack in skill, judgment and character. Half the girls of the village were after him. Well, the lucky one will be in for quite a surprise. If his behavior that day was any indication, the best his future wife could hope for was to be ignored. The child clearly wasn't able to express either compassion or affection. Or feel either. Still, this little episode gave Hiashi hope for his daughter and the entire Hyuga clan. Maybe, she wasn't as much of a problem as he had thought. With the right motivation she could obviously fight exceptionally well. And her performance in other areas had always been pretty impressive. Hinata probably would have been put in the branch family already if she hadn't been that good with strategy and finances. Deep in thought, Hiashi bought new chocolate and left it at Uzumaki's door. Hinata's judgment of the Uchiha had been on the spot. Maybe, the girl was also right with the Jinchuriki. Her infatuation with Naruto Uzumaki had been often discussed in the clan and was seen as further proof of her lack in the Hyuga abilities. After all, every Hyuga in history had always fallen for very strong and important people. They might not have been anything special as children, but all had grown up and became famous and reliable. It was said that because of the Byakugan all Hyugas could see the personality and potential easier, earlier and clearer than anyone else. Due to this ability Hyuga children often simply saw earlier in a person what sort of spouse they would become and fell in love accordingly. Granted, often this was more of a headache and heartache than a benefit. After all, seeing something before others did not mean you actually obtained it. There had been countless Hyugas with broken hearts. Anyway, due to this ability and the Uchiha's reputation, everyone expected her to fall for the last Uchiha. And was ready to console her after the inevitable happened. But Hinata never considered the boy. The whole clan believed her to be blind for this. Even after all other girls started chasing him, she still ignored his very existence. Instead she fell in love with the Jinchuriki. Nobody expected that the boy amounted to anything, since he was the death last of the entire academy, a troublemaker, an insolent fool, without any manners, and failed at basically everything. But his own daughter saw something in him nobody else could. Hiashi had no doubt whatsoever that it was true love and not just some simple crush. Hyuga's never had a simple crush. Ever. The clan decided back then not to interfere until the girl asked for help as was tradition. Though, normally interfere meant to help a Hyuga attract attention from somebody. If Hinata asked for help with a possible relationship to Uzumaki, it had been decided to try and talk some sense into the girl. It just would not do for her to marry someone who couldn't talk a single minute without either insulting someone or yelling at the top of his lungs. Still, Hinata had been right about the Uchiha all along, he was neither reliable nor fit for any sort of relationship. Maybe, just maybe, she was also right with the Uzumaki. After all, a Jinchuriki had a great power, and if he learned to control it, he would become one of the strongest fighters possible. Well, Hiashi could and would wait. It wasn't like Hinata had any competition. And if the girl really was right, he could help her. That way, his daughter could marry who she wanted and the clan could gain a great asset. It had been a perfect plan. But now the Uzumaki boy was gone, most likely dead in fact. Leaving the village, not to mention his own plan, in a mess, even without other villages finding out that Konoha had lost its Jinchuriki. And nobody could find him. That boy made a mockery out of their famed Byakugan. At least they weren't the only ones who failed to find him. The whole village was in an uproar. Some people demanded Uzumaki's execution or were afraid. And then there were the parties. The children already started to ask uncomfortable questions. If things kept going this way, the secret around Uzumaki would get out. And if the children acted strange, when the Jinchuriki came back, if he came back, then his loyalty will very likely shatter. If that hadn't happened already. Hiyashi's family was even more of a disaster than the village itself. Hinata hadn't said a single word since yelling at the Hokage of all people. And Hanabi was now too afraid of her own sister to stay in the same room for more than 3 seconds. The rest of the main family had a similar mindset. Hinata herself didn't care and made sure everyone knew it. At least it made for quite entertaining meal times. She hadn't talked at missions either. Thankfully, her team was still doing D ranks and wouldn't be in any danger anytime soon. Kurenai refused to let her students do a single C rank before any and all problems were solved and her team worked well together. Much less allowing them to leave the village before even being on speaking terms. So far Hinata had not accepted or offered any help during missions. At all. She did what Kurenai told her, ignored both teammates and stayed silent the whole time. The only scrap of comfort he had was that Hinata actually fought him seriously in their spars and thus had become far better lately. But it was a bit worrying when your own daughter tried to kill you. With the enthusiasm of an Inuzuka with a blood feud and a compassion of a starved wolf to boot. Hinata's fighting skill was for sure the darkest silver lining he had ever seen. Especially since her loyalty was questionable at best. No matter how he put it. Being happy that your own child tries to kill you was just wrong. Though, not everyone shared his worries. The Branch family for example found the entire situation hilarious. None more so than Niji. Hiashi had always hoped that his nephew and Hinata would reconcile someday. And now he got his wish, they were inseparable. And pranked everyone in ways that would make Uzumaki green with envy. Including the elders, the Ambas, the Hokage himself. So far his hair had been dyed orange, green, blue and pink. His robes on the other hand had been yellow, blood red, covered with mud, feathers, flowers and shards of glass. The other disturbance could be hidden thankfully. And he still had no idea how they did it. Or even how they managed to coordinate these pranks, considering Hinata didn't talk. Not even to Niji. He had no knowledge of the specifics of the pranks Hinata had pulled on others. But that the Ambas were actually scared to so much as approach the compound made him pretty nervous. The only reason she wasn't punished so far was that nobody could prove her anything. Not even the Hokage. Hiashi was at his wit's end. He really had no idea what he should do about his daughters. Hopefully, Uzumaki was still alive and would soon be brought back to the village. He would even help Hinata with the boy, as long as she became agreeable once again. Maybe then Hanabi would also stop running and hiding from her own sister. Otherwise he would be very worried about both girls' continued loyalty. What a mess, true love was always such a headache. Naruto was brought to the queen's private study. She wanted to talk with him about something important. In private. No, not that talk. That will be Tsuru's responsibility. He will tell Naruto everything he knows. And suspects. And had done. Maybe letting her pervert of a husband give Naruto the talk wasn't such a great idea. Before she could give this any more thoughts, her darling grandson came in. And after a little hand signal, all her and his guards went outside again. To wait until the two of them finished their discussion. Though not before Naruto made sure they knew she was safe. Since he would protect Gran. Well, best to get started. This would take long enough, even without delays. Say Naruto, what do you think your life will be like as the King of Diamond? I didn't really think about it, to be honest. I guess it will be similar to being Hokage, right? Only with a big country instead of a hidden village. And what do you think the life of the Hokage is like? That's easy. The Hokage told me a few things about this. Let's see. You get the fancy hat, the biggest office in the city, and all others obey you. You also are the strongest in the village and everyone likes and acknowledges you because you protect them. What else? Oh, right, as Hokage you have a lot of money and most girls would like to date you. The queen frowned at this answer. Something was very wrong. Even if she could not put her finger on it. Why on earth had the Hokage lied to Naruto like this? Why had they spoken of this anyway? Or spoken with each other at all? Ishi things aside, first order of business. Set Naruto straight and bury those childish, stupid and fantastic ideas so deep an entire army of miners wouldn't be able to find them. Really? So that is what he said and what exactly did you see? Did you see how much others liked the Hokage? Did you see that absolute everybody obeyed the Hokage? Did you yourself obey him? Have you seen him in any relationship or know how much money he has? Now that got Naruto's attention. He had always believed the Hokage and trusted him. But then again he had also known about the fox and pretended he didn't. Not to mention his advice made Naruto believe Sakura liked him. Well, time to take a closer look at what the old man had told him. So, first about others liking the Hokage. Okay, that was easy. His own grandson didn't like him much. And rumor has it that his own son actually went to the daimyo only to get away from his father. Those not related to the Sandaime were also not always happy with him. The mummy man alone, Danzo, right, had often complained and argued with the Hokage. Well, that also answers the question if everyone really obeyed him. No, they complained and argued until the Hokage gave in. The only reason Naruto obeyed even slightly was because he wanted to become his successor. And even then, Naruto had more often than not ignored the old man's words. Come to think of it, he had pretty much ignored the Sandaime completely before hearing of the advantages of that position. From the Hokage himself. Great, he had been played like an absolute fool. The Hokage simply said some pretty words and he just believed everything. And even decided his own goals in life after those very same damn lies. And started to listen to and do everything the Hokage told him to. Well, at least he was now far away from that lying old bastard. Just to be throughout, Naruto thought of the last few points. Well, the Hokage had been married some time ago but lost his wife in the Kyuubi attack. But this was years ago. And to Naruto's knowledge the old man never got another woman in his life. But considering how much of a pervert he was, it probably wasn't for a lack of trying. Even the women in the village, while respectful with the Hokage, showed no real interest in him. Not even those in his age. And for money and gigantic offices, well, Naruto knew for certain the Hyuga clan had an even bigger office. And far more money too. Because of a few pranks Naruto snuck into their compound and got a lot of information. Not that the Hyugas were the only clan Naruto had visited. Finally Naruto admitted in a rather small voice, no, the only true thing he mentioned seems to be the hat. Maybe the part about the strength, too. He lied to me on purpose, didn't he? I'm sorry Naruto. I don't know him very well. And don't know why he told you this. But I do know that a lot of this is simply not true. Your first idea, that Hokage and King are similar positions, is indeed so. There are a few differences, but let's start with the similarities. Both share a few important duties. The most important one is the duty to their people. Without people a country or village is empty, a ghost city and for all intents and purposes dead. A king without subjects is a simple landowner without power or company. And most likely he owns empty, dead land. The Hokage needs his ninjas to do missions and the civilians for trade and normal service. A cage without a village or with a ghost village is merely a powerful shinobi. Not exactly harmless, but also not really dangerous. Because a single person can't always be careful and therefore can be assassinated if he does make trouble. But with a whole village on the lookout, it is almost impossible to kill a cage in secret. It would come to a huge fight and the trouble is rarely worth it. Then comes the duty to the future. This is linked to the duty to the people. It means ensuring your land can prosper, using opportunities and generally make live safer and better for the people. It also means to avoid mistakes or problems like diplomatic incidents that could lead to war and therefore to destruction. Those parts are the duty of both a cage and a king. Your education will cover a lot of strategy, politics, plans, counters, contingency plans, security and other topics to help you with this duty in the future. Last is the duty to the land. To expand the territory and make sure not to lose parts of it. But only if your subjects will not suffer for it. A war over territories is only acceptable if your subjects have too little place to survive. If more people would die from not starting a war than from fighting in one, I wouldn't hesitate to declare a war. But that is almost never the case. Most nobles start wars because of hurt pride or other stupid reasons. For now I can take care of those duties. But I won't live forever. And in time they will fall to you. Don't worry, you will be prepared for each and every one of them. And I, as well as your great-grandfather, will give you advice and time to help you adjust. Then, there is also the duty to ensure a successor. It's actually part of ensuring the future. The only difference is that a Hokage searches for a successor in the ranks to appoint a suitably strong ninja, and a king produce a heir to continue the line. We had an heir, your grandmother, my daughter Kari, but lost her. She was ready to take over the throne, but wanted to travel beforehand and for some reason never returned. Anyway, since you are now our only living relative and I'm far beyond childbearing age, this duty is yours. You will have to start a family at some time. And raise your child to be a good king or queen. Preferable sire more children, so our line is no longer in danger of dying out. You are actually in a unique position. To understand this, you have to know about our bloodline, as well as about the rest of your family and their bloodlines. Let's start with the nature bloodline. It is not limited only to our family. In fact, most people of Diamond have it as well. The biggest advantage from the nature bloodline is the ability to absorb chakra from our surroundings. That way we can increase our stamina or refill chakra reserves at will. A little bit will always be absorbed, even while being unconscious. It takes a bit of training to absorb more chakra at will or to stop absorbing chakra. You will receive the necessary instructions starting next Monday. Our bloodline has the unfortunate downside of only producing female descendants. No women with nature bloodline had ever given birth to a boy. Until your mom. You sure do have that bloodline, otherwise you could not have opened the basement. The seal at all entrances would have put you to sleep instead. It's a precaution. The basement is an escape passageway, and the seal is in place to ensure nobody can use it for infiltration. If the castle were under attack and we had to flee, I would open it and evacuate everybody. So, be sure to close all entrances when you go there. Okay. Anyway, since women with the nature bloodline conceive only girls, there are far more women than men in our country. Therefore, we have a few other laws and traditions about relationships or marriage than most countries. For example, it is quite normal for a man to marry many women. Most common is around 3 or 4. Though, because of your status, it will be expected from you to marry more than 6 at least. What? But you can't just tell me to go and marry 6 girls. And I'm not. You are just 12. Nobody expects you to marry anyone before you turn 18. Besides, it would be 7. I'm only telling you this because you have a right to know and to help you understand why people will behave the way they do. I don't expect you to get a girlfriend or several right away. Much less marry someone by tomorrow. But I also won't stand in your way if you decide to do just that. I'm trying to tell you why a lot of girls will try to become your girlfriend. Because I'm sure that is what will happen. And I want you prepared for this. That's all. Alright. Okay, I guess, but only if you promise not to force me to get a girlfriend or marry someone. Okay, Gran. That's fine. I promise. And I will make sure Jura doesn't force you on a girl either. Or knowing him into a girl. The queen sighed dejectedly. She didn't look forward to convince her dear husband of this promise. He could be so stubborn sometimes, and he really wanted Naruto to start reproducing. Preferable yesterday. Men. Well, anyway, because almost no boys are born in Diamond, women go traveling for a bit when they reach adulthood. Some bring back a possible husband from these travels. Most men who live in Diamond and especially in Titan are actually from somewhere else. Your great-grandfather Jura included. He grew up in an elemental country, like you. I believe it was Earth country. But before a woman can marry, her family has to approve. Well, that is not exactly correct. It's more they can marry, but would stay childless without family approval. All girls receive a certain seal shortly after birth. This seal makes it impossible for them to become pregnant. And they are only removed if the girl's family approves of their choice in a husband. That seal protects the children because there had been a few tried kidnappings. The elemental countries and a few others wanted our bloodline. Since every girl has such a seal, they are useless as breeding stock and are safe. The only exception is our family. No member of the royal family ever had this kind of seal. But we had always bodyguards and were safe that way. So much to the nature bloodline. Since no male ever inherited this bloodline before, I'm not sure if you would be able to make boys, girls, both or neither. Because of this you have an appointment with our family doctor tomorrow after lessons. You can't just check my manliness. A red-faced Naruto squeaked. Of course I can't. I don't know that much about medicine. That's why I asked the doctor to take a look at you. The queen pointed out reasonably. But Naruto would not let anyone analyze his manhood, damn it. Gran. I won't show my Johnson to a complete stranger. And that's final. Come on, Naruto. The doctor will check you completely. To make sure you're as healthy as you look. She will take a sample of your blood as well for a few tests. One of those tests will tell us what gender your future children can have. She won't need to look at your privates. The main reason for this checkup is actually if the strain of your lessons is too much. That's all. Naruto blinked, wait a minute. Does that mean I don't have to go to school if the doctor says so? Not exactly. It means we can ease the workload, especially in your current private lessons. The doctor will tell us if you work too much and how many lessons were better for your health. Oh. Okay then. The queen blinked at that, right back to the topic, the nature bloodline is only one bloodline. You have a bit more. Let's talk about your Uzumaki heritage next. But please keep in mind, I don't know every single detail of any bloodline, but those native to Diamond. As far as I know, the Uzumakas, the royal family of Yuzu, are renowned for their seals and swordsmanship. And for their chakra chains. They can make those chains and shot one end at the enemy. I believe the other end stays in their body. With them the Uzumakas can bind or drag people and things. Sometimes even Bijuus, depending on the chakra reserve of the Uzumaki and whether or not they have support. I can't really teach you those things. But I sent a letter to Yuzu's daimyo, your grandfather, earlier, and I'm pretty sure you will receive training from him or someone he picked out. That's unfortunately almost all I know about them. The only other thing I know is that the royal family of Yuzu is pretty small, so much so that their bloodline is on the edge of dying out. I can't even tell how small exactly. Well, next we have the bloodline of the Kyushu clan. They have a healing ability. That means they heal far faster than normal and are able to heal every wound as long as it isn't lethal. Even without medical aid. Some say they never get scars because of their healing, but others have claimed they had seen scars on a Kyushu, so I'm not sure about it. Your father Minato Namikaze must have also had this bloodline, but because he was so fast, he was rarely injured as far as I know. So it probably just never got noticed. Everyone thought that bloodline would die out with Jiraiya. I would never believe that immature mockery of a man ever managed to get a woman, never mind sire a child. If I hadn't seen the proof with my own eyes. The healing is actually a physical bloodline, that means it affects your body. And this one is completely passive. You can neither train it nor activate it. Even suppressing it won't be possible. If you're injured, you heal. It just happens. The last bloodline is from your grandmother on your father's side, Tsunade Senju. Though, as far as I know, she can't use her bloodline. I don't know why nobody from the Senju clan learned how to use that bloodline since that Hashirama. Actually, that's pretty strange, now that I think about it. Well, back on topic, the bloodline is called wood release and more or less a normal elemental bloodline. Those are usually pretty straightforward. You combine two elements to get something else. That means like all other elemental bloodlines you need to master the baselements, in this case water and earth, and then start working on the right combination. You will get some training in your baselements after mastering the nature bloodline. The combining differs somewhat between two people. No matter if they're from the same clan. From what I heard, even twins combine their elements a bit differently. So I'm afraid you will have to get that on your own. The only thing we can't give you, that you might have gotten in the Senju clan, are some existing jutsus. You will have to create your own jutsus with wood release. But I heard it's not that hard once you mastered the combining. I can offer you a few ideas for those as well. Besides, it's unlikely that the Senjus really had such jutsus. Or if they had, that some still were around. The Senju bloodline is believed to already have died out because Tsunade Senju, the last known Senju, is past childbearing age, never learned the wood release, and has no known children. Strange that nobody knew the Namikaze was her child. As far as I know, those two didn't even spend much time with each other. Usually people don't get more than 3 bloodlines. Well, having 3 different bloodlines is already almost impossible. Bloodlines are separated in different kinds. There are physical ones, elemental ones, and eye bloodlines. And a few bloodlines that don't belong in any of those categories. Those few are often beyond rare. The nature bloodline and the chakra chains of the Uzumaki are both a special kind of bloodlines. I think there are maybe 10 more special ones out there. The point is, the 3 usual kinds of bloodlines sort of interfere with others of the same kind. For example, if you have a child with someone who has a physical bloodline, your child won't inherit either your healing nor the mother's bloodline. Except the mother has also the same healing. Same goes for elemental bloodlines. If the mother had a bloodline for ice and the father one for mist, the child will receive neither. Eye bloodlines work that way as well. Only special bloodlines are different. I know for certain that all of them don't interfere with any of the normal bloodlines. It is possible for 2 different special bloodlines to just add to each other. Since your nature bloodline wasn't cancelled by the Uzumaki bloodline, I'm certain that you have both. But there is no guarantee for it. 2 special bloodlines can just as easily interfere with each other and leave the child without either. Anyway, so much for your bloodlines. As you see, you have all in all 4 different bloodlines, 3 of them close to dying out as well, and the other one is highly desired by most countries. On top of that, you are the only heir of Diamond and in line of succession for Yuzu. Because of this, many countries and families will want to get a daughter of them close to you. Either for your bloodlines or the throne. possible both. Unfortunately, I had to inform the council of you and your heritage, so most likely a few girls in Titan already know about you. There will also be a huge festival for your introduction to Diamond as a whole. Most likely the daimyo of Yuzu will organize something similar in his country for the same reason. The other countries will also get official notes about your heritage, both the political and the bloodlines. I actually called you here to explain to you everything that will be said in those notes, to prepare you for the likely reactions, and to discuss a few details. The notes will basically cover what bloodlines you have, what they do, and that you are only starting to receive proper training with them. They will also tell your exact station in regards to the line of succession for both Daemon and Yuzu. If I send those notes with only this, every or at least almost every other country will send a huge group of girls to Titan for diplomatic relationships. In truth, these girls would probably be ordered to seduce you and either try to become your wife or at least get pregnant from you. So to gain your bloodlines for their countries. I would not really be worried about it, you will need to start a family at some time anyway, but the problem would be the number of people coming to Titan. We would be hard pressed to keep order with half the populace from another country. Some of them even at war with each other. Well, you see the issue. If we don't set some basic rules, we will be overrun and have foreign people fight each other on our ground. That's why the official notes will also include an invitation. To give those countries an opportunity to get their girls close to you and to help you find future wives, each country is allowed to send 3 girls to Titan, together with at most 10 escorts. These girls will be considered your fiancés, and they as well as those children of Diamond themselves will start the next school term with you. The girls will be introduced to you before school, so you know who will try to get your heart. The other countries will prefer sending their girls to the same school with you over sending them on a diplomatic mission and risking that they will never even see you. So we can control the numbers a bit. But don't think everything is set in stone. You decide in the end and can veto any decision, even mine, in regards to your girls. That means you can add a girl you like to your fiancés, as long as the girl in question agrees, or end a betrothal and send the girl home. Over time I will send a few girls home as well, if I think they wouldn't be good for you or for Daemon. Though I won't dismiss any girl you like. If they want to, the daimyo of Yuzu and his family can also have word in those decisions. When there are fewer girls you will also have an easier time as well. There will also be some strict rules to ensure peace and order. For example, everyone who tries to sabotage any other girl or attack someone outside of spars will end the engagement of all 3 girls of their country. Everyone of such a country will get thrown out of Diamond and we will stop all trade with them. Even if the rule breaker is an escort. I won't get involved in intern struggles as long as they keep it to themselves. The girls will also have their own rooms and appointed bodyguards. We can also give some girls a personal maid, but we shouldn't just give every girl one. Maybe your favorites or something like that. Also, the girls can't just visit you without an appointment, otherwise you would never get some peace. Of course you can visit each of them anytime you want. You will meet all your fiancés at the welcome festival at the latest. On a related note, while Tjura and I won't interfere in your choice, we are always willing to give you advice and a bit of help. Regardless if about girls or even life in general or about a specific problem. Well, Naruto, do you want to change any of those rules or arrangement? I want to skip the whole thing. School too, if we're already at it. Naruto grumbled to himself. Thought Gran must have heard him because her lips twitched. Well, it couldn't really be help. If they didn't allow these betrothals, everybody would send as many girls as possible to Titan and he would be overrun. But the last resigned sigh, he relented. Ugh, okay Gran, if I have to anything else you're going to dump on me. Now if you want more I can always give you a few ideas what sort of girl to look for. The queen grinned at the panicked boy. No. It's okay. Really? Well, I guess then, I will just have to humor your curiosity this once. Where do I start? Oh, yes, that would do. Every person has his own goals and priorities. And at least at some point there's usually a difference between one person and everyone else. However, the most important thing to a person is easier to find out. For some that's things like money or fame or power and strength. For others it's other people, like family or friends, sometimes even people in general. Of course I want you happy, but I also want our country safe and our people content. So you have to keep your and the girl's future responsibilities in mind when making your choice. A lot of girls will want to become your wife and the future queen of Diamond. At least some of them will likely try to get together with you for the money. Some others may want the power of our army. That's why you need to be careful. If you choose poorly, the entire country will suffer. So think of your future lives. What sort of duties you and your wives will have and how will a normal day go. A girl that ignores simple duties like homework for school will likely ignore her work as queen too. Or do it poorly. Your classes will cover some politics and strategy, so look closely how your girls perform at those topics. Also look how they treat others, not only yourself. They will show their true color more likely with strangers than with you. since they won't care what the stranger thinks. Also think of continuing our line. It's better to choose girls that have a bit of knowledge and experience with children and how to raise them. Or at least show promise in that regard. Of course, in worst case a nanny can raise your children, but it is better to do so yourself as parents. There is also the domestic bliss to consider. Since you have to marry at least 7 girls, it's vital that all of them can live with sharing you. In best case they will be or become friends. It's enough however, if they can simply live at peace with each other. That said, there are naturally some kinds of girls you really shouldn't marry. For your own happiness as well as for Diamond's future. Basically every girl that would have problems with such a life or their duties. No matter for what reason. Some girls are incredibly shallow. They will go to everyone who has money and influence. The more, the better. Often they expect their husband to take care of them and of every single problem they have. You can usually recognize them as those girls that ignore any real work and instead declare loudly their undying love for their targets. That sort of girls do only what they want or are forced to do. Everything that they won't get tested on, they will simply ignore. Regardless of the consequences. Naruto suddenly had an image of Sakura in his head. Smiling and complimenting the last Uchiha. Because he was the strongest and coolest guy in school. Doing some reading for the next test was probably the most preparation she had ever done. Since she was bad with Taijutsu, Naruto had often asked her to train with him. But she had always snubbed him. Saying she had more important things to do. Her ninja training was necessary for survival, so that was ridiculous even as an excuse. And the more important things regularly turned out to be simple shopping. Not even noticing Naruto's scowl, the queen continued. Another reason for caution is arrogance. Even if a girl is head and shoulders above her peers, she should stay modest. Should she consider herself better or more important than anyone else, she will deliberately or not look down at others. It's bound to seed resentment. With other governments, within your own family and with the people of Diamond. That's nothing you should have to deal with. Then there are girls that are simply lazy. Knowing you would not be interested in them anyway. Good thing too, as they would just let their work rot until it was too late and everyone were in trouble. I don't think I need to talk about abusive girls. Nobody in their right mind would send anyone here who would dare to hit you. But just so you know, there are actually girls out there who have such a violent temper that they would hit somebody for minor things, like a misunderstanding or a bad day. Even if the boy in question waited on her hand and foot. Usually those girls have also a conscience like a kunai. The end pointed to others is very sharp, accurate and dangerous, but their own end is blunt and has a big enough hole to slip through. Naruto could only nod at Grand's description, thinking of Sakura again. He still considered her beautiful at least in appearance, but strangely enough it didn't hurt so much to think of her anymore. Maybe with a family and a lot of others who cared so much about him, it simply wasn't as important anymore to get Sakura to like him. Not knowing her great-grandson nodded from experience, rather than just showing he understood her, she pointed to other potential trouble. The second most dangerous type, however, are selfish girls. Especially in positions of power like being queen. Selfish people know only the duty to themselves. They have usually trouble with sharing or compassion. Neither are good traits for a relationship of any kind. Much less a marriage with more than 2 persons. They would probably pass only laws to improve their position and otherwise ignore work. Girls who are selfish will for sure try to get you. Most will probably know not to be obvious. With either flirting or selfish behavior. They will try to look like little angels for you. And for Tajura and me as well. So, you should actively look out for clues. It should not be too difficult because a lack of attention for others is kind of hard to hide. The last group and by far the most dangerous as future leaders are cruel people. Someone who enjoys causing pain and suffering. Those are very likely to start a war or make their own people suffer. I doubt anyone would let a cruel girl near you because they're likely to turn their back on former masters, but you should still be careful. Cruel girls almost always give their true nature away in the manner they interact with someone they deem unimportant and useless. For example, a maid who works for them, or if a little child, say 3 years old, is lost somewhere and a person finds him. That person may try to find the child's parents. Even a cruel person may try the same. But they only do so if they get something out of it. Otherwise they will probably taunt the poor thing. More often than not those traits actually come together to varying degrees. And none of those traits are easy to hide. So as long as you pay attention, you should be okay. Now to the traits your wives should have. Even if they aren't as important for you personally. First of all, kindness and compassion. That is important not only for ruling a country or helping with it, but also raising children and in any marriage. It's opposite of cruelty, but similar to recognize. Simply look how the girls behave if they feel unwatched and interact with someone defenseless. Also, a future queen should take her duties and people seriously. She must have good manners, otherwise Diamond will be at war sooner or later. All of your girls should understand politics themselves and if possible people. They need the ability to work together as well. Most of this you can evaluate in your classes. How much effort a girl puts into class indicates how important she considers her duty. How she works with others in class and treats them at break shows if she is able to cooperate and how important she considers others. But be careful. Not every girl that can complete a project with somebody can also share her husband with that person. In best case you choose a group of girls that are friends and pursue you together. Because then, they'd have already decided among themselves to share you. It would be a lot easier for everyone like this. Anyway, back to the topic. You will see the manners of your classmates basically always, especially at lunch. Politics is one of your classes and if you want an estimation of a girl from another class, we can always get the teacher's opinion. What else? Oh right, understanding people. First of all, understanding and liking are completely independent. You can hate someone even if you can understand him enough to predict his every move. And you can fall in love with a girl even if you are absolutely puzzled by her. Though, more often than not, you will like someone better if you understand him or her. Understanding people is actually rather complex. Judging someone's character, sometimes at first glance, is quite necessary. But it's also dangerous if you start to stay with your first assumption instead of paying attention. The more accurate the judgment is, the easier will be possible negotiations. A good understanding makes it easier to cheer someone up, too. Or possible predict a person's moves to some extent. Including even whether or not that person is trustworthy. It has a lot of other benefits as well. Unfortunately it's rather difficult to see how good someone is at understanding others. Maybe, the ones more often surprised by other have more difficulties with this. I don't really know. But then again, it's not really the most important part. So just keep it at the back of your mind, okay? Even harder to predict is how good someone would be at parenting. In that case you have to actively look for it. Again, it's no drama if your favorites aren't any good at it. If worse comes to worse, the servants can always look after your children. But it would be better for them if they were raised by their actual parents. Though the most important thing in any future wife of yours is loyalty to you, our family and Damon. Don't forget, some girls will come from different countries. If they're more loyal to their old homes than to Damon, they could give away secret information or even betray you. Jura and I will also look out for potential problems. So please, talk to us if you find a girl interesting that way. For starters it should be enough to think how a girl would be in daily life as wife, mother and queen. Try to imagine what your life together would be like. And listen to your heart if you want such a life. Naruto had not planned it and he really didn't want it. Still, images flooded his mind. What ifs? If he had really managed to become Hokage and married Sakura pretty on the surface, he would have believed everyone would like him because of his title, believing everyone did what he ordered them to do, believing Sakura had loved him since their first year at the academy. Sakura yelling at him in front of his Jonin, Sakura asking him to change the academy standards. So that only knowledge was important, him cancelling all physical classes, including Taijutsu, Shuriken training and ninjutsu, because smart Sakura-chan wanted it, Sakura, asking him to improve trade so she could get that beautiful new dress, him cutting back security to allow business better access to Konoha, Sakura, spending more money on clothes and jewelry than they had, him not paying attention because the third told him a Hokage has always a lot of money, Sakura demanding respect from Konoha ninja and visitors alike just because she was the wife of the Hokage, Sakura getting abducted on a regular basis because she was too weak to defend herself, him trying to get her back not for the first time ordering his ninjas to help the one who had yelled at them whenever she had a bad day because there was hardly anyone who hadn't been yelled at by Sakura, him not understanding the situation and ignoring dissatisfied people because everybody likes the Hokage people, beginning to hate Sakura and him, Sakura for her arrogance and him for his ignorance, him never doubting or checking anyone because everybody obeys the Hokage. The images just kept coming. Naruto could do nothing. He just stood and stared. And thought about the disasters that were bound to happen if his wishes had been fulfilled. The dream he had since he could remember just turned into a bloody nightmare. Funny. After his dream being dismissed as impossible so often in Konoha. And if not dismissed outright, he always heard why he shouldn't try to become Hokage. He had never bothered to count either occurrences. Much less listening to them. Even if he had tried, he would have lost count long ago. But he still kept his dreams. And now the first time someone actually considers him good enough to lead a village. A country even. The first time somebody pays attention and encourage and gives advice, and exactly that conversation buries his dream of becoming Hokage. And his wish to go out with Sakura. Well, Naruto had to have received just as much rejection from her as he had gotten about becoming Hokage. And yet, that never stopped him. The whole point of this talk was to get the prince hooked up with someone as soon as possible. Instead, the advice caused him lose any last interest in Sakura he may still have had. Naruto didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Settling for a small sigh, he let go of his longtime crush. Maybe it was for the best that they would never be together, that they would never see each other again. Time to look forward. Still, it was a lot to take in. Hell, that was probably more than he learned during a whole week with all his private teachers put together. His head still swirling with all the information, expectations, advice and duties, Naruto made his way back to his chamber. There he simply lied down, his mind on the future, his coming fiancés and the school he would soon go to. Naruto had just finished writing Grand's advice down. It didn't even bother him to do what he had previously considered homework and therefore would have detested. School generally didn't bother him anymore. On the contrary, Naruto started to like it. So he didn't mind to do a few more years. In fact, Naruto looked forward to next term. Learning was much more fun when there was progress. A big difference was also that nobody made fun of him. Or his answers. Neither his teachers nor anyone else. They also didn't kick him out of class or dismissed his abilities. In fact, he got often praised for his achievements and hard work. Even though others, like his guards, had to know just how far behind he had lagged. Hell, now that he understood things better, he would have a hard time not laughing at some of the answers he gave before. Still, the only things he got so far were patience, explanations and gentle corrections. Naruto still remembered most topics from Konoha and finally understood what the teacher had been trying to say. Or more likely, not to say. They had been going out of their way to make any topic more complicated than they were. Using long and complex words for simple facts. For example, he still remembered the description of chakra from Konoha. Not that he got the meaning back then. It read as follows. Chakra is formed one part of spiritual energy and one part physical energy. In order to improve the control, one has to exercise any random application of chakra. For exalted capacity one may improve each component. Back in Konoha, Naruto couldn't make heads nor tails of it. Now he understood it meant basically. Chakra is partly body strength and partly concentration. If you want to have an easier time using chakra, then just practice some jutsu that uses it. If you want more chakra, then you need to train your body and study some. His teacher told him another definition. A ninja can make chakra by picturing his body strength as a liquid. Then picturing said liquid strength to move in a given way. You need a calm mind for this. Picturing a bigger flow for more chakra or a smaller one for less. That way you can use chakra. The precise path you picture your chakra going decides the effect of a jutsu. Each jutsu have different paths. To get better control, keep using chakra. Ideally with a jutsu you can barely make work. To get more chakra, study to improve your concentration and train to improve your strength. When Naruto told his teacher the definition he had learned before, she hesitated for over 5 minutes before reluctantly answering. Apparently, her description mentioned everything Konoha had said. In an easier to understand manner. Konoha's explanation was also far more vague and absolutely useless for practice. According to his teacher, it would be a miracle if anyone made even a single jutsu work without the part about picturing the chakra flow. And that person would probably be a natural. Naruto was fully convinced Konoha had sabotaged him. Nobody explained any path for chakra to him. Not for Kawarimi, Henja Bunshin. He still remembered the week when Kawarimi was introduced. The first lesson was theory. How to use the jutsu, some strategies with it. He and the others had tried Kawarimi at the end of the lesson. All were eager to get the jutsu down, but nobody was able to make any progress. The very next day a teacher dragged him to the director. Naruto hadn't done anything then. He was sure of it because he used every single minute to train Kawarimi. Still the director yelled at him for over half an hour. Though they didn't give him detention, now that he thought about it. Usually they gave him as much trouble as they could get away with. By the time he was back in class, the other students already had the jutsu down and only practiced to improve speed and such. The teachers must have explained how to do Kawarimi while he was yelled at. No wonder everyone learned faster than him. He simply didn't got enough information. It wasn't the only time. He still remembered a lot explanations that were neither useful nor clear. As well as a lot of times he got dragged to the director or kicked out of class for little reason. Hell, they sometimes didn't even bother making up something. Oh, well, no use dwelling on the past. The bright side was that he could compare his current knowledge with his former classmates. Right now he had caught up to where a regular student was at the end of his last year. And it had been only a week since he started. Kijebushians are simply great. He still had some way to go, thought. And Naruto really looked forward to becoming better than Sasuke team. Not that that would be the end either. Even after being on equal grounds with the team, Naruto would still lag behind the average second year from Daemon. And as future king, he should be top of the year. True, Gran never said anything. And Gigi could clearly care less. But the queen was always so happy whenever she saw Naruto reading or training. Delighted even. Heck, his guards were just as overjoyed by his quick progress. If he continues as fast as until now, he will probably be the top of the year when school starts. Well, except for history. That will take a bit more time. But nobody will think anything of it because Naruto had been in Konoha before. And Konoha logically had a different history than Titan. And therefore a different history class. Naruto will probably caught up in history a month after term starts anyway. Life sure was different these days. He was different. And he couldn't be happier about it. He had family now. He wasn't lonely anymore. Hell, he hadn't been alone for a whole minute ever since meeting Gran. It wasn't a next to each other and ignore one another together either. His guards paid him close enough attention to make Siamese twins burst with envy. Not to mention everyone was nice. Even people Naruto didn't know. He still couldn't wrap his mind around it sometimes. Ever since arriving in Titan, not a single person had made fun of Naruto. Not even the smallest bit. Instead, everyone was polite, nice and kind to him. Naruto briefly wondered if children with family consider such lives normal. Everyone heaped attention, affection and assistance on him. Just as Konoha had heaped those things on Sasuke team. Maybe even more. It was kind of hard to tell. Also, getting praise and affection became ridiculous easy now. Just do some homework, train for a while or read something. That had never worked in Konoha. Then again, they thought he was the demon fox. Even the Hokage believed he was the fox. Going even so far as trying to tame him. Boy, was he relieved about having his family tree. No fox or demon there. Only humans. He even framed and hung it up in his room. There, a bit to his left, right next to the bookshelf was his proof. He was completely human. Shaking his head, Naruto reminded himself that it was over now. He was in Titan, not Konoha, and had family. Maybe even friends. He certainly liked the girls who were guarding him. He still didn't think he would need guards, but he liked the company. They were fun. And nice too. Naruto offered to talk Gran out of making them guard him, but Maya just mentioned that they basically got paid to hang out with him. And it wasn't like they had any more fun missions available. So he just dropped the topic and accepted them following him around everywhere. Either way, Naruto would simply enjoy it and try to make his family proud. Not that he thought he needed to prove his worth to the people here. They seemed to consider him worthy of becoming their leader already. Well, he wouldn't disappoint them. Another big difference was actually food. Naruto had been worried that he would get in trouble with his eating habits. More precisely with the amount of food Naruto wanted to eat. But then he saw others, even Gran and his guards, eating just as much. Only Gigi preferred smaller servings. Of course Naruto asked about it as soon as he noticed. Apparently the nature bloodline increases a person's normal metabolism to the point he has to eat 10 times as much food as someone without the bloodline just to make it through the day without starting to starve. No wonder Naruto had always been so hungry. In Konoha he had only had a small allowance each month. And it hadn't been nearly enough to buy as much food as would have needed. Add to that a general overpricing because they believed him to be a demon. Well, the end of the story was he had been starved in Konoha. Plain and simple. Naruto had been hungry so often and for so long, he hardly had noticed it anymore. Only the days after he got invited to Ichiraku's he had felt the dull ache in his stomach. It told him there was missing something again. Because at the ramen stand the day before, Naruto had eaten until he had had enough. But he had learned to ignore it. Not like he had had any other choice. Naruto couldn't have eaten as much as he wanted because else he wouldn't have had any money by the end of the week for the rest of the month. If there hadn't been those invitations, he would probably be dead by now. Between almost constant hunger, often being put down or ignored, plain boredom and not having any friends, Naruto had always been restless. But now, with so much exercise and lessons, caring family, funny friends, patient teachers and enough to eat, he was a lot calmer, relaxed even, and pretty happy for the first time in his whole life. He still had a lot of energy to burn though. But also some more ways to go about it. Games, training, studying or things he learned recently, like dancing or writing. With all this, Naruto didn't really had the time to prank someone. Also till now he liked everybody too much to prank them. He didn't even miss his pranks. Card games, playing catch or dancing with his guards were far more fun anyway. His guards loved dancing. It was amazing how often they wanted to dance. Then again, Chan said almost all girls like dancing and in Daemon weren't many boys to dance with. So, maybe it wasn't that weird. Their other all-time favorite was very much so though they liked to be read Icha Paradise. Well, Haruhi and Kyoko not so much. They always ended up with different shades of red or passed out on the floor. That's why Naruto refused to read it loud whenever either of those two had guard duty. He didn't want to get them into trouble. But everyone else liked hearing about Rajija. Even Naruto himself. True, the girls had to talk him into it at first. Now though, Naruto liked reading, doubly so if it was for his girls. In fact, he started reading another book for them as well. A little adventure story. That he read whenever he was too tired from training to sit up and either Haruhi or Kyoko had to concentrate. But most still preferred Icha Paradise. Miyuki, Toriko and Mariko found the messes Rijija got into with unnatural regularity, incredible funny, and wanted to hear all, no matter how stupid. Kaji, Rika and AM argued that they could use the book as a bad example. To explain him the mistakes the hero does and what to do instead in real life. By now, Naruto could actually point out a few blunders of Rijija. And he got better with every page they discussed. What Naruto didn't know however was that his guards had a few more reasons for this decidedly weird interest. In fact Toriko and Mariko wanted to seduce Naruto. Kaji too, to be honest. It wasn't even a political move. They just wanted to have some fun. They were after all just young girls on the brink of womanhood. And had no boys around, except for the prince. Well, Rika's reason could be considered slightly better. Maybe she wanted him interested in girls because of his duty to continue the royal line. She would consider it a shame to let the royal line end. Maya and Kazami didn't really mind the book. They simply didn't care. And didn't pretend to do so either. Miyuki only wanted some fun, but she actually meant laughing over Rijija's trouble. Only AM actually wanted him to practice reading, no matter which book, but also wanted to give him advice on girls. Simply because she found Naruto nice. He looked around at his girls. Toriko and Mariko sat on the ground near his bed with Kyoko. They had talked her into a bit of scat. And were losing badly despite cheating suppressing a snicker. Naruto looked for AM. She was near a window and taught Haruhi how to apply makeup. Next to her stood Miyuki. She had guard duty and was silent for a change. Kaji and Kazami had guard duty as well. With Kaji standing at the door and Kazami near his desk. They were obviously in strategic spots and keeping watch. It was amazing how relaxed and confident Kazami was on duty and how awkward in every other situation. The other two Maya and Rika amassed sit-ups. Naruto wasn't sure whether they were competing with each other or trying to motivate one another. Either way, they were counting loud enough for each other to hear and both were already over the 200 mark. Naruto's guards have moved into rooms next to his. But only really stored their stuff there. Or to sleep a day if they were tired. Most of the time they stayed in his room. Even sleeping here at night. Thought at least 3 girls were awake at all times. Well, they had to at least pretend to pay attention to possible dangers. He considered joining them but was still a bit sore after his training. Joining the card game was also out. Scat worked best with 3 players. And he fully intended to run for the hills or his Jiji if anybody wanted to apply some makeup on him. That left joining guard duty kind of pointless or reading Icha Paradise. A little question later, Naruto was lying on his bed and his off-duty guards lazing about around him. Those girls currently on duty didn't leave their post, but they certainly listened in. Icha Paradise. Our handsome hero, Rijija, was looking for a new adventure and reached the next town. His first stop was the local doctor. Where a doctor was usually a nurse as well. And Rijija felt like he needed the tender care of one. And staying at a nurse place was a surefire way to set care. Not to mention he always wanted to play doctor with a real nurse. Sadly when Rijija entered the doc's waiting room, he saw no cute little nurse. Only an old and overweight one. She was already around 25 for heaven's sake. Heaving a disappointed sigh, Rijija made his way to the exit but then saw a beautiful angel coming out of the bathroom. The lady was definitely under 20, a little pale, had a slim waist, and big she had light blue eyes, brown wavy hair and a pretty face. Jackpot. That was where Rijija would stay for the next days. Rijija started flirting right away with one of his best pickup lines. My love for you is like diarrhea, I just can't keep it in. Beautiful quickly hid a small container with something brown and was apparently speechless by his incredible flirting abilities. Well, if the first was such a success, another would wrap things up. Rijija. Do you need a man to spend all your money on? Beautiful. Well, I don't think that's such a Rijija. Okay, I will give you this chance. Don't mess it up. After all, I'm the great Rijija. You can feel honored to help me. Sadly, they were interrupted by an old man without manners who went to the toilet. And had the gall to actually push his way through. TSK, some people really had no understanding of the important things in life. Beautiful. Sure, Rijija-sama. I will just get my Rijija. See? That's much better. And if your cooking skills are as good as your looks, I may even let you sleep with me. And again, he was interrupted by the same old geezer coming out of said toilet. Strangely he had the same little container in hand. Though the brown stuff inside was a little darker. Beautiful. Oh. That would be great. I won't disappoint. Rijija. Sure. So, why are you here in the first place? Beautiful. Well, I have trouble breathing and wanted the doc to look. Rijija. Anyway, back to the important stuff. I'm done here, so let's go. You know I hope you have good lungs because I want to make you scream my name the whole night, hahaha. Now even kids interrupted him. A small boy, maybe 4 or 5 asked to let through, hopping from one leg to the other. Seriously, couldn't his parents teach him to be quiet when adults spoke? Beautiful. Yes, Rijija-sama. And on they were. To Beautiful's house. She even tried to prolong the walk by avoiding the river. Saying it was because she couldn't swim. Rijija passed the time with flirting. And checking the potential of this town at the women front. It was definitely a good town with lots of hot women. Somewhere on the way he had mercy with Beautiful and agreed on a little date. Swimming in admires, Rijija organized a small date at the local lake. After all, every girl likes swimming. He was full of anticipation whenever he thought about Beautiful in a revealing bikini. Still, he had a reputation of being cool and mysterious to maintain, so no grinning like a madman for him. Instead he opted for being half an hour fashionable late and leaning on walls during the day. So of course Beautiful was already at the agreed point when Rijija arrived and was grateful that he hadn't stood her up. So after a little greeting Rijija took her to the next ice cream stall. They had exquisite chocolate ice. Good thing Rijija got 5 scoops right away. But the vendor didn't seem to like Beautiful because he looked at her rather strangely when she paid. Maybe that's why she only took 1 scoop. Anyway, after their ice, they went to a gambling casino. True, Beautiful was a bit hesitant, but once there she would enjoy it. Rijija even showed her how each game worked by betting a bit. Unfortunately, he couldn't use his own money. He would need it later on in his travel. So they played together. With Rijija showing which decisions to make and Beautiful investing her money on it. Sadly, luck was against them this time, but well, you can't have everything. Besides, the various cute and buxom waitresses more than made up for it. With no money left on them, they went back to the lake. And finally Rijija saw Beautiful in a tiny, revealing bikini. Her figure was simply amazing. A perfect wasp waist, 2 round, soft and silky bosoms, not to mention her red pouty lips, who begged to get kissed. She was almost as pretty as the little blonde a few feet to the left. Of course Rijija gave just as good as he got. And so he changed into his swimming trunks and rewarded the lucky lady with a good look at his hunky body. Just as Rijija was about to jump into the lake, a small voice hesitantly spoke up. Excuse me, I'm lost, have you seen mom or dad? Great, a little brat. And this now. In the middle of their date. In fact, Beautiful looked at the pesky kid with adoration. Better to get rid of little pretty boy before the brat actually managed to distract his girl from admiring his Adonis-like body. Don't worry, kiddo. The great and handsome Rijija, dream of all women, hero of all children, will help you. Do you see those rocky cliffs? You can see really far from there. So, off you go, climb to the top and look for your parents. But Mom forbid me to go there, she said it was too dangerous. Because the cliffs are always wet and slippery. And I could get hurt badly if I fell off. Or even fall into the lake and drown. Oh, don't be such a coward, brat. Your mom probably just wanted a little place where you wouldn't bother her. So maybe she's even there. Nothing to worry about. And if I have to, I will come along. Now man up and let's go. A small shove later the little bugger was gone, not even looking back to make sure Rijija followed. By the time the brat realized he was alone, they would already be somewhere else and swimming. Not to mention Rijija finally had the attention from Beautiful again. So now how to get her wet and giving her an appealing mermaid look. Mentally rubbing his hands, Rijija suggested a little race into the lake. But Beautiful said she couldn't swim. Who on earth couldn't swim? It was just natural after all. Well, that had to change. No girl of Rijija would ever be unable to do something as simple as swimming. No use thinking twice, he simply picked Beautiful up, went to a shore where the lake floor fell away sharply and threw her into the lake. She screamed a bit and started to flounder. Rijija decided to give her time and allowed her to work it out naturally. So he went to investigate the awesome triplet of hotties. Maybe he will even pick them up. The triplet consisted of a blonde, a redhead and a black-haired bunny. All with very similar hergless figures. Their faces were pretty much alike as well. As were their cups' eyes. Now that he thought about it, Beautiful and the hotties triplet would make an acceptable little crew for a small nightly adventure. Well, time to secure the other players. Breathe if you're horny. Alright. Score. And all of you too. How about a little fun? The more the merrier after all. The girl started giggling and couldn't help but goggling his ripped abs. Of course Rijija entertained these girls not only with his amazing physics, but also with a few hilarious stories from his travels and from home. He had just made himself comfortable on a blanket, wondering when Beautiful would get it already, learn swimming and come back to the party, when something hit him. A little cat had broken off a twig directly above him. Annoying little beast. Well, time to show the blasted furball who was boss. And show his girls how strong he was. He would never allow a handful fur to humiliate him. In front of hot ladies no less. So Rijija took a very large rock and threw it leisurely. Of course even a leisurely throw from someone as strong as himself was as fast as a bullet. The cat never had a chance, it was hit and thrown out of the tree and into the water. That's how men handle annoying little pests. The girls were staring with open mouths and were clearly impressed by Rijija's strength. They immediately jumped him and threw kisses at him. Still, they weren't exactly in a private place. Such kinky little bitches. Well, the gallant Rijija had always been a true gentleman and as such could hardly ignore those ladies. Much less their wishes. So, Rijija did the nice and selfless thing and started packing his things together. Or rather told the girls what stuff came into what bag. After all, with 3 girls as company, nobody could expect him to do silly little household chores. Though before the little hotties even finished with their duties, the little pretty boy brat from earlier came back. With tears running down his face. How disgusting. And the boy even threw himself at Rijija. With his snotty nose, wet tears and bloody leg, he probably wasn't going to get his clothes clean ever again. Shit. Sniff mister, I sniff went to th the sniff cl cliff and sniff mom wasn't sniff th there. Sniff d dad wasn't there either. Sniff and I sniff fell down sniff when I sniff went back. Sniff and now my sniff leg hurts. Sniff can you help me sniff please. But grief brat, just stop crying for heaven's sake. Men don't cry. Or cuddle for that matter. Men are strong and hard and noble and selfless and independent. Like me for example. So grow up already. Your parents left you alone. Big deal. You're hardly the only one. You were probably too much trouble for them just be glad that I helped you earlier and leave me and my girls alone. Besides, I'm not your daddy. I don't have to look after you. But this Rijija ended the discussion and went for one last swim in the lake. That way, he could get away from this annoying brat and give the triplet of hotties enough time to pack the rest of his stuff together. However, on the way back to the shore, Rijija was suddenly caught. Something was holding to his ankle for dear life. And whatever it was, it became increasingly dangerous for our favorite hero, no matter how much he struggled, his foot just didn't come free. After quite a few impressive acrobatics, especially since he was still in the lake, even someone as strong as Rijija would eventually lose his strength. But just as everything seemed hopeless, the gallant and charismatic Rijija put all his remaining strength into this last attempt at freedom. He kicked at whatever was holding him in a downwards half circle and managed to tear some sort of cord attached to his ankle. He was free again. Swimming to the shore as fast as he could, with almost no strength left, Rijija got to the safe beach. But what he noticed there shocked him almost more than this sudden attack. Nobody had noticed his heroic fight. Or how close a call it had been. Seriously, how blind could people be? Or how carefree, neglecting and selfish. Simply ignoring such a great man when he was in danger. Really. Some people need to learn to pay more attention to others people's lives. Especially when said life was in danger of becoming not so lively. At least the brat was gone and the girls almost done with packing. Suddenly Blondie started giggling. Ah, she found Rijija's little treasure. A book full to the brim with nice, extensively tested and always working pick-up lines. Not that he needed them of course. But reading was good for the mind after all. Blondie shared her find with the other two and as usual, they became increasingly horny the more they read. Before the girls could start to gang up on him and try to take him there by the lake, the entire group went to a nice hotel with good hour rates. The girls could hardly wait for the fun to start and already caressed him on the way. Not that it changed anything. After all, Rijija had enough discipline to make a monk green with envy. Still, the girls made it into the hotel room without embarrassing themselves too much. And there Rijija gave them what they wanted so desperately. Blondie's turn came first. She ripped both their clothes apart and started to ride him. After she came for the first time, Rijija turned her around and took her from behind doggy style. Of course he left a quivering mess behind. But who could blame her after 2 orgasms? Next up was the hot redeed. This one Rijija started with taking her standing. He actually had to quiet her down because she was yelling oh god. So loud and so often. Rijija was truly worried they would get kicked out of the hotel because of the noise. After 3 orgasms in a row, best hat trick ever, the little hottie paid him back with a great blowjob. Last but not least was the black-haired beauty. She got a perfect seat Rijija's lap. After she came for the first time, he stood up and put her on the table. There he brought her to yet another high. Satisfied to have done the right thing and given these girls some love, Rijija sent them on their merry way. Granted, they had a bit of a hard time walking, but after pleasing them so much Rijija deserved his peace. And so he went to sleep after another great and exciting day. But the end of the chapter, Naruto decided to start the actual debate on Rijija's wooing skills or lack thereof. He knew from experience that Kaji and the twins will join the discussion once they stopped laughing. Well, I'll try to list Rijija's mistakes up until now. Those we had discussed before as well. Naruto started, thinking of the soon-to-come engagements. Okay. Obviously bragging is rather unhelpful. It's better to let your actions talk for you. And if you truly are asked about your achievements or skills, it's better to downplay your abilities because you look humble and nice. Don't be shy about your achievements, rather behave like anything you did was perfectly normal for you. Though admissions you should be rather accurate and neither brag about nor understate anything. Actually, to be honest, it starts to get to my nerves too. That Rajija is such a great guy and everyone worships him. Especially the girls. Instead of talking the whole time, it's better to pay attention to the girl you want. Rajija completely ignored that beautiful couldn't swim, heck he didn't even ask for her name. Or listen when she spoke. He also was so rude to interrupt her. He basically ignored what any woman said. In most cases it's better for the guy when the girl talks. And he agrees more or less. Not like saying yes dear over and over again. But in a way, that shows he had actually listened and know about it. Like adding his own experience of the discussed theme. Or asking questions about this or related topics. Though it should not become an interrogation. If his experience leads to disagreement that's perfectly fine too. As long as both are discussing with logic experience and not just stubbornly exclaim, that is so and nothing else is right. But I'm not going to give you my reasons. However there are rather shy or just quiet girls, like Haruhi, who don't usually talk that much. Or don't know what to say. Then it's a good idea to tell a funny anecdote, like something that happened a little while ago. And start the conversation from there. Like, hey. Do you remember have you heard about that was funny cool strange, right? I laughed so hard then. Or something like that. And when she had given her answer but fell silent afterwards, you can just say that reminds me for example of a joke or something. Generally, if the girl doesn't know what to say, it's a great relief if the boy does the talking. Also with such girls, a date can easily become an interrogation if the boy asks too many questions one after another and the girl gives short or no answers. Still if the girl is for example sad, you could ask her what was wrong. Then there are the kind of questions. You should start off with neutral ones. Like name and favorite things or something like that. Things you could ask both a guy you have just met or a girl. You should only ask private questions if you already know the girl and even then not in public and with a bit of introduction. Not just asking for a girl's breast size out of the blue. Maybe beforehand mentioning that she seemed more feminine lately. And then carefully asking if she grew in that area. Best thing is to start off with a truthfully compliment and then lead to the question you want answered. The compliment however has to be an actual fact and related to the question, not just randomly saying, hey, you have beautiful eyes. What is your breast size? Also if the girl is crying, hurt or otherwise in an obviously bad position, you should ask if she's alright or if you could help her, rather than trying to joke around or chatter up with meaningless stories. Then there are Rajija's pickup lines. You told me, pickup lines work only if the girl is already interested in the guy, right? True, but they can kill all the interest if they are bad enough. The one with my love for you is like diarrhea, I just can't keep it in. Is an especially bad example. Never compare love with things that have a bad connotation. At least if you want the girl to like you. The one with do you need a man to spend all your money on? Isn't any better. Seriously, as if anyone would actually agree to such things. Added a pouting Rika. Okay. What else? Ah, right. Ordering a stranger around in a sexual way is also bad. I know as Prince I'm probably allowed to order others around. But it's bad for any personal relationship even normal orders. Besides simply asking is usually all that's needed if those involved come along well enough. So no orders to get naked or to do anything embarrassing or to do something sexual. Hehe, I wouldn't really mind such orders, Naruto-sama, flirted Toriko with Mariko nodding at top speed. Kaji actually wanted such orders too, but would never admit it. Beep. Wham. Boy, Haruhi. Are you okay? Wake up. Toriko-chan don't make such jokes. You know how Haruhi literally can't take them. I'm sorry Naruto-sama, I will get a doctor right away. Came from the already running Toriko. And I told you not to call me Sama. Your Highness, you have to get used to your title. At some point you will start interacting with your other subjects, not to mention with high-ranking officials of other countries, and it'll be better if you're used to the honorifics by then. Signed Rika explaining this for the umpteenth time. Besides, for the 7th time. You didn't complain before today. Why is it important now? Asked Miyuki. For the 7th time as well. I was so surprised about my family and everything that I didn't really notice. But now, we're friends, aren't we? It doesn't feel right to be called Sama by any of you. Complained Naruto. This made all of them smile, their prince was truly a kind soul. He would make a great leader for Diamond. Then how about this one? Since we are your friends, we want you to get used to your titles soon and therefore use them as often as possible. Kazami offered. Well, even Naruto had to accept this. Alright, back to the topic. Rajija's stupidity and how to make a girl like you. AM got back on track. What about how he had those high minimum demands? Like that a 25-year-old was way too old for him. And that the girl should be slim. Asked Maya. Naruto was confused, what about it? Love doesn't follow rules. From my point of view, age difference doesn't really matter as long as both parties have similar interests. A 14-year-old will most likely have other hobbies than a 25-year-old. But Rajija is traveling alone, so it's safe to say he should at least be an adult. No offense, but your lonesome journey was quite unusual. So an adult of unknown age and another adult of 25. I doubt they're all that different. Pointed Kaji out. I guess so. Admitted Naruto. What about the other part about being overweight? Well, most girls believe boys only want slim girls. I don't know if it's true because I'm a girl, but to outright disregard someone because of their weight seems stupid to me. The weight doesn't change a girl's personality. You can still have as much fun with her as with anyone else. To be honest, I also believe that some boys prefer heavier girls because some of that weight goes into their bras. Still, you would be the best to answer this. Do boys prefer slim girls or those with a bit more weight, or does it not really matter? What is your preference in this? Mariko asked carefully. I don't think I have a preference, to say the truth. I used to like a girl and she happened to be slim. But that was just coincident, it didn't really matter back then. I don't think I care right now, but then again I'm only 12, so I guess I don't even know what I prefer right now. Naruto mused. Damn it. And I was so carefully at fishing for information. Pouted Mariko. The way Rajija handles the kids in this story is also rather annoying. Naruto pointed out. Good job noticing this one, Naruto-sama. He basically makes it obvious that he would be as bad at parenting as one could get. For heaven's sake, he sent this one child to a dangerous place to get rid of him. This is just irresponsible. And I don't even want to talk about how he tricked and ridiculed the little one. Honestly, any woman that wants a child of her own at some point in the future, no matter how far away, will reconsider dating such a man. And wanting children at some point is likely something natural for women. The only women that wouldn't care maybe would be those who really don't want any children at all. Everyone else would have to consider this guy a serious threat to their possible future kids, their family's kids or the neighbor's kids. Besides, a guy that is great with kids is just something great to look at. Most of the time such an interaction looks incredible cute. Added AM with a dreamy look. Naruto thought back to his grand's advice on girls. Imagine how the girl would be as a queen, wife and mother. Imagine a daily life with her. And listen to your heart if you want this sort of life. Well, he supposed they were right. Neither age nor figure mattered in these questions. Only if the girl waited so much that it created health issues or kept a mother from playing or keeping up with her children. Maybe it really was just a personal preference. Also, Rajija explained to the first girl she should feel honored to help him. Frankly, asking a stranger for help is only not rude, either when it's important, like someone's life being in danger, or when it doesn't make any trouble for the person asked. You can easily ask someone for the time or for help if someone is at risk right then and there. But to demand from someone to spend their money on them and telling them they should feel honored about it shows an arrogance of the size of the Eastern Mountains. Miyuki scolded. So being humble is better? Naruto asked. Yes. Answered well everyone. Azami took pity on him and explained, you see, Naruto-sama, arrogant people often don't listen to anyone and care only about themselves. They also have so-called double standards in most cases. That means they have a few rules and expectations for themselves, if even that much, and far more for others. They tend to keep their opinion, no matter how much or often they have been proven wrong. Never mind that those people often foist off their own mistakes on others. Trying to live with others that give you rules they don't even follow themselves, and you just can't argue with them because they're always right. Well, it gets frustrating rather soon. Often it's even impossible to meet their standard for others. On the other hand, a humble person listen to and think about what others say. That way you can compromise. And the other person will also try not to inconvenience you too badly if it can be avoided. Being mindful of the other one, it's far easier to live with one another. That double standards are bad for any long-term relationship should go without saying. This made a lot of sense. And sounded awfully like personal experience. Well, time to change the topic, or rather go back to it. I suppose so. Well, what else? I guess looking at other girls while on a date is a bad idea too, right? I wouldn't like it either if the girl stared at other boys. It's also against that pay attention to the girl tip. Naruto pointed out. Very true. It's not really that big a deal in Diamond since the women are already used to sharing a man. But in any place where women don't share husbands it's a very big deal. Still, when you promised a girl to spend time with her like on a date, you should spend this time only thinking of the girl. And not mentally stripping every girl you happen to pass. Sometimes a woman can get jealous even here. And those issues are rather difficult to deal with. Miyuki answered. I found it incredibly rude that Rajija made one of the girls pay for everything. He basically played in that casino with another's money. Mentioned Rika, I don't think that the guy has to pay for everything either, but throwing, or in this case gambling away other people's cash, is far beyond the pale. Then again, gambling isn't very sexy in the first place. Luck can change quickly, developed skills on the other hand are reliable. So would a girl like it if I pay for her and give her presents? It's not necessary the money or the items themselves, Naruto-sama. But as far as I know all girls like getting spoiled. If you give a girl attention, presents or think about her, it all means the same. That she is very important to you. That's why girls like presents. They can look at something and know their boy thought of them, even when he was away. However, if you only give presents, but neither attention nor thought, it may look like you want to buy the girl. If a present is just a reminder that the boy has money, but not that he paid attention to what the girl likes or that he would think of her, it can go rather wrong. Most girls don't want to be bought. Since that would make them little more than prostitutes. Explained Maya. But a girl isn't a whore just because she receives presents. And I don't want anyone to think that I think that either. Naruto complained. Don't worry, Naruto-sama. It's really simple actually. As long as you spend enough time with a girl and make an effort for her, nobody will believe you want to buy her. Kaji reasoned. Just to make sure. How much is enough? Because my teachers kind of take that away. Or I could use Kagebushin. I don't think that's such a great idea. The girl probably wants to spend time with the real you. But you could use Kagebushin for your teachers. Well, I guess you already do anyway, enough time depends on your actual free time. If you prefer to spend that time with more hobbies than one could count rather than to spend it with your girl, she can't be really important to you. But if you two spend time together when you're both free and plan other things, like your hobbies, around that, then your girl clearly takes the priority. Answered a rather amused Mariko. And what about being fashionable late? I thought you should be on time on a date. Naruto asked. See, you already know more about girls than the author of this book. Praised AM, personally I doubt any girl would still want to go on that date if the boy doesn't give a very good reason for being late. Maybe, but I found it far worse how much Rajija took advantage of the girls. He took everything from others and didn't give them anything in return. Heck, he threw the girls out just after he had gotten all the sex he wanted. Also he basically treated that one girl like a possession. He made every decision for her, even when she said she doesn't want something. He simply decided that the girl had to learn swimming, but instead of patiently teaching her, he flat out pushed her in the lake and didn't even try to make sure she was alright. For heaven's sake, she could have gotten a cramp from the sudden panic and exercise. Rajija just left her there. Irresponsibility, thy name is Rajija, or the author's Jiraiya, right? If he actually considers such behavior normal. Raged Rika. Does that mean a guy is supposed to be responsible and serious the entire time? Come on, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I don't think so, Naruto-sama. I believe you can have fun and joke around to your heart's content. But only when the time and place is right. That means during a difficult exam for example would be a bad time, but afterwards should be fine. And your jokes shouldn't put somebody in danger. In best case everyone else can laugh along with you and doesn't have any downside from your fun. If a joke does some harm, the victim will probably not like it. And people or women with a good sense of fairness won't like it either unless the victim actually deserves it. A nervous Kyoko tried to help. Yeah? That's a relief. Laughed Naruto. Most girls actually like a playful and funny boy. But as Kyoko said, only if the mood isn't too bad. Most also like cuddling and a soft caring side of their boy. Well, as long as it's not embarrassing them at least. Such things make everyday life more interesting and fun. And are way better than a boring guy. I know a few men who are quite a bit childish when they're relaxed. I still consider them far more manly than most because whenever you go to them with a problem, each one of them just takes care of it. They help as good as they can and they can help a lot. Rajija on the other hand is already over-challenged by his own problems. He even panicked when he had trouble swimming, never mind that he beforehand just threw someone else in the lake without any care. For me, a real man is someone who is there when needed. And that, more than anything, is something you already do, Naruto-sama. You try so hard for the sake of your family and country. Someone who is simply reliable, just like yourself, won't have problems with getting girls to notice him. I'm sure of it. Kazami added. Naruto blushed with the praise and was grateful. Not only for the compliment but also for all those pieces of advice. He was even more grateful when Toriko and Haruhi came back and drew the attention away from him. Still, as embarrassing as this talk was, he would at least be ready for his fiancées by the time they arrived. If he had to choose the future queens of his country, he would give it his very best. For Damon and his family. And maybe, hopefully, his best would be good enough for true love. For as long as she could remember, Sayori had always stood at the queen's side and helped her as much as possible. She stood by her side when they had lost Kari. She stood by her side each time when the Kin clan asked her about a successor and when she had denied them. And of course she will stand by her side when Prince Naruto mounts the throne. But god fucking damn it. She wasn't going to stand by such cruelty. And she so wasn't going to stand by the queen's side when she read those bloody files. Or anywhere near her for that matter. And she was even less going to stand by the queen's side when she tried to explain this crap to the council. All this was running through Sayori's head on her way back to Titan, and she still was trying to come up with something, anything at all, that would get her out of the room or the country instead of giving an actual report. The mission itself had been pretty easy in the end. The only thing somewhat close to messing it up was her own temper and those vile villagers. But Sayori was a very loyal ninja, she couldn't let some bastards put her mission at risk. Besides, Konoha would know soon enough just who they had lost. And maybe, the queen would allow her to come back and take some revenge. But now wasn't the time, sadly. Suddenly she sensed others. Damn, she was really distracted by the whole mess. Otherwise she would have noticed them a long time ago. Just over a bridge she saw a small carriage with about 20 samurais. They bore the crest of Whirlpool. Oh, wait a moment, wasn't the prince related to the daimyo of Whirlpool? The queen must have sent them a note about Naruto-sama, and this was probably the reply. A red flash brought her eyes upon the Batasai. Right. The daimyo had a son as well, Kenshin, the Batasai. He was the prince's uncle and must be Kari's child too. Didn't that actually make him another heir to Daemon? Well, he was definitely powerful enough to be a ruler. After all, he was one of the few ninjas from the west that would be considered incredible strong even by Eastern standards. In fact, in a fight one-on-one with nothing but swords, the Batasai could probably beat every ninja in Daemon hands down. Including the queen. She should try to get a bit of information about him, so Sayori approached the traveling squad. Evening, gentlemen. Are you on the way to Daemon? The Batasai drew his sword immediately and jumped between her and the carriage, the samurai not far behind. Who are you and what do you want from us? Don't worry, I'm not here to fight. I'm Sayori from Daemon and just finished a mission. Back home, I met young Prince Naruto. I suppose Queen Sari sent you a message about him. Right. That got the attention of the daimyo. When did he get out of the carriage? Ah. So you know my grandson. Sadly not personally, I only saw him once and he was asleep then. But I heard only good things about him. Also I went to school with Kari. Did she come too? Sadly, my wife died over 10 years ago. I'm sorry. Sayori felt like the earth was swaying. After Naruto-sama appeared, she dared to hope she would actually see her old friend again. She should have known better, trying to ignore the hot tears that once again ruined her makeup, not to mention her mood. She actually took a step back and held herself on a 3 upright, hating herself for the signs of weakness. Well, my condolences then. I guess you know, when I saw that she had a child, I had hoped that she was still alive, damn it. The queen probably assumes her daughter is alive too. And now it's like she died a second time, but if she was alive, why did she never came back? Sayori didn't whine. Crystals don't whine. So she didn't either. Not at all. When I first met the woman who should become my wife, the poor girl had lost all her memories. The waves brought her directly to Aandral. Everyone considered it a sign of the gods because no one else had ever survived our maelstroms. Rina was such a wonderful woman, my people quickly fell in love with her, just like I did. Rina? Asked Sayori. Who on earth was Rina? And hadn't they talked about Kari just now? My son actually came up with the name. She didn't know her real name after all, and we couldn't truly call her you there. She just laughed and agreed. Saying that usually an adult choose the name for a child, with her it was the other way around. Rina Kari, right. Found it funny. Later on she often laughed about it, especially when she was thinking of names during her pregnancy. The daimyo reminisced. Ah, I see then Kari wasn't Kenshin-sama's mother as well, mumbled Sayori. Mother may not have been related to me by blood, but she was still my mother. Not that it would be any of your business. Kenshin fumed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Or her. I just thought about the line of succession in Daemon. That's all. Sayori hastily explained. The daimyo tried to mitigate, Kenshin actually asked for a mother from a shooting star. So he was convinced that Rina was sent from the stars for him. And promptly decided that I had to marry her. Father? That is hardly the time or place for this. Besides, I was 3, will you ever give it a rest? Kenshin grumbled irately. You snuck out of the palace and stayed up the whole night for your shooting star. Everyone was worried sick. So no, I won't ever stop bringing this up. However, I agree about this not being the right time or place. Enough about us. Sayori-san, please tell me about my grandson Naruto. Where was he before? And why weren't we informed about him? Is he a happy child? And healthy? How did you find him anyway? How is he? What about hobbies, friends and his character? You must have heard something, right? I heard he is really hardworking and kind. And as far as I know, he's happy and healthy. He was in Konoha before coming to Daemon. I actually was on a mission to get his files from there. Sayori answered happily. Really? How comes Konoha never saw fit to tell us about Naruto? Well, we better settle that with the Hokage anyway, about those files I wish to see them. The daimyo said. Oh, the Uzumaki temper was pretty famous. And if she herself had trouble not to start killing Konoha's population indiscriminately, they would probably explode. As much as she thought Konoha had it coming, she didn't really want a front row seat of that disaster. Damn. She had to think of an excuse. And fast. I'm really sorry Daimyo-sama, but my mission was to bring them to the queen directly. I don't want to explain to her why I had let them out of my sight or hand. But I'm sure the queen will let you read them anyway. I could tell you how he met the queen though. The daimyo could accept this. He would expect the same from his own people after all. And it was only a matter of time until he saw the files. Until then it was enough to listen to the story how his dear grandson met his unknown mother-in-law. So they kept traveling, the Uzumakas and samurai listening carefully to Sayuri. She told them what she had heard from the queen. Not only about the first meeting, but also about his guards and teachers. How his teachers agreed that they had never met such a bright, creative and lively child before. And how he seemed at home in the palace already. Sakura had the time of her life. Not only was she finally a ninja, no, she was even on the same team as her Sasuke-kun. She could see him every single day. And more important, he could see her. Take that, Ino. You don't have a chance. Nor does anyone else for that matter. To make it even better yet, she didn't even have to share Sasuke-kun with another teammate. True, if that Naruto idiot came back, he would be put in their team, but that would never happen. He was probably dead by now. Naruto was nothing special. He was always last place in tests and spars and well everything actually he couldn't even perform a simple clone jutsu, for heaven's sake. That idiot was just too stupid and weak. Oh well, he would have probably died on his very first mission outside Konoha anyway. Sakura was absolutely sure that Naruto was long since dead. In fact she would bet her best dress that he got himself killed within a half hour after leaving the village. Even if he had been by some miracle still alive at that point, the Hunternans would have found him by now. See. At first Sakura was really confused that Hunternans got sent after a single orphan, one who was as weak, stupid and plain irrelevant as that idiot Naruto. But Iruka-sensei explained the situation to her class. Apparently Mizuki-sensei had betrayed the village and used Naruto to get some important scroll with dangerous jutsus. While Iruka-sensei fought the traitor, Naruto ran away with the scroll. So an impressive number of Hunternans and even some Anbus went in search of the scroll, and if they stumbled over the idiot, they would have brought him back too. Since he was innocent. Well, this time at least. The only thing that didn't really add up was that they were expressly forbidden to fight Naruto if they came across him. They were ordered to just tell the idiot that he could come back, and if he didn't believe them, they had to leave him alone and report the whole thing. Seriously, what were the higher-ups thinking? It's not like Naruto was dangerous. He was after all the absolute weakest, clumsiest, loudest and most useless student of the whole academy, basically the complete opposite of any serious, real ninja. A first year could likely beat him. Never mind someone as awesome as Sasuke-kun. He had done so in every single spar since their very first spar. Sakura herself could beat Naruto easily as she had done so countless times already. Like when that Naruto idiot was bothering her or Sasuke-kun. Even the scroll wouldn't help Naruto in the slightest. The scroll was likely written for Anbus or Jonins, so the idiot wouldn't understand the first thing from it. After all, Naruto didn't even understood the schoolbooks, which were written for kids. He had always been the last to get a jutsu right. Heck, he still couldn't do a simple clone. Naruto would never be anyone important, of this Sakura was certain. Hell, everyone knew that he would never amount to anything at all. Well, maybe with the exception of Hinata Hyuga. But then again, Hinata was a failure herself. And she couldn't even see Sasuke-kun for the incredible guy he was. So she was just blind that way by Bakugan, the all-seeing eyes, my ass. Everyone else could see Naruto for the idiot he was. Not like you needed a Bakugan for it. Well, that wasn't her problem. She knew how to recognize a good catch. And she was going to get her man. Even if their stupid sensei Kakashi was so damn unhelpful. Kakashi sensei was always hours late, read icha books, ignored both Sasuke-kun and her on their D-rank missions, didn't help in the slightest on said missions, and on top of all actually expected her to get all sweaty and dirty in front of Sasuke-kun. Some people just didn't know what was really important. Since Sakura had the advantage of being on the same team as Sasuke-kun, she had to look good. Sooner or later he would notice her as a girl, and she just couldn't screw her chances with him by being dirty, with paint stains or heaven forbid sweaty. Sadly this meant that Sakura had to sit out on the mission so far. With her unable to help and Kakashi-sensei being too lazy, all the work was actually stuck with Sasuke-kun. But unlike Kakashi-sensei, Sakura made sure to always praise him for his hard work. Thank God, Sasuke-kun was so awesome he could do the work easily. He could probably finish even a B-rank mission all by himself. Like protecting a caravan or something. But the so-called missions Kakashi-sensei was giving them were a complete joke. Painting a fence or weeding a garden were just chores, not missions. Nobody should expect or even allow a young lady to ruin her clothes with grass stains by weeding. Not to mention Sasuke-kun's talent was absolutely wasted with this kind of missions. They were clearly beneath any Uchiha, never mind the clan head. True, since there were no other Uchihas left, Sasuke-kun was sort of clan head by default. But that was a minor detail and not all that important. The important thing was that Sasuke-kun was the head of the Uchiha clan. An incredibly rich clan, which had produced some of the strongest ninjas in history. No doubt Sasuke-kun would become the strongest ninja in their generation too. And with him as a father, any child was bound to become awesome as well. Sakura could already see it, her life as the wife of Sasuke-kun, as she had dreamed about it so often she would shine on Sasuke-kun's arms of all galas, as was her duty as the wife of the clan head of such an important clan. Outshine all other ladies, just like her future husband would outshine all other ninjas in any fight. She would bear his children to restore the clan. The children who were bound to become incredible. Sakura couldn't wait to shove her future children's achievements down those other girls' throats. Nobody would ever dare to make fun of her again. Instead she would be one of the most popular persons in the whole Fire Nation. Sakura would have money to buy everything that catches her fancy and maids waiting on her hand and foot. So she could look great at her functions or simply relax during a pregnancy. Those maids could also care for her and Sasuke-kun's children. It was perfect. The only problem was that Sasuke-kun has yet to show any interest in girls. He was so shy. It was rather cute actually. Her future was sure bright. She couldn't wait. If just Sasuke-kun would finally get a move on and ask her out. Regardless of the few little problems, she still had the time of her life. Her mom was right. True love always wins.